Greetings, Dr. Beckett. Welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast.
In 1995, theorizing that one could time travel within their own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. After years of attempting to bring him home, the project was abandoned until now.
Quantum Leap was an experimental time travel program, years away from being tested.
Why did you leap?
I don't remember anything.
Your name is Dr. Ben Song. You're a time traveler leaping from life to life, trying to put right what once went wrong. I'm Addison Augustine.
You're the woman I love.
Yeah, Ben.
He remembered you.
I know you're worried about Ben's motivations.
Ben's working with someone.
Al Calavicci's daughter, Janis.
Someone opened a remote link in the system.
Janis Calavicci.
What is that?
That's a destination. I think that Ben was trying to leap into the future, to a specific place, a specific point in time.
That shouldn't be possible.
I remember
Remember what?
why I leapt in the first place. It's to save you.
What?
You are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast. This is episode 126, Fellow Travelers.
Yeah, you, step aside!
Come on, boys, be nice to Jack. After all, my life is in his hands.
Addison, where are you?
Where is he? Chicago, April 24th, 1979.
Addison, you okay?
Yup, just looking forward to finding out what the hell Ben meant when he said he leapt to save me.
Guessing she's not happy about Ben keeping that a secret.
Sorry about that dramatic exit last time.
Not your fault. So, tell me everything.
Well, it's coming back slowly. I remember working with that woman, Janis Calavicci. I remember knowing that what I was doing was the only way I could save you, but I just don't remember from what.
And I don't suppose you remember why you couldn't tell me?
I know you're upset.
I just feel like of things to say to your fiance, you're in danger, feels like the top of that list.
I'm just as frustrated as you are, and I'll remember. I'm sure of it.
Okay, let's just focus on the leap.
It's 1979. I'm a bodyguard named Jack Armstrong. I'm here with a singer named Carly Farmer, and it's the day before the concert. There, now we can have our conversation.
No, we can't. Ziggy says Carly died on stage. In her sound check.
That's now.
Carly!
Ben, I don't think that was an accident. Ziggy says now that Carly doesn't die in her sound check, she's murdered tonight.
Jamie is here and we can't find Trevor.
Jamie.
Carly's younger sister.
Oh, that Jamie. She's here?
She says she has a ticket to the show tomorrow and claims she was invited to this party.
Which, obviously, she wasn't.
Okay, I'll tell Carly.
Jack, are you insane? She's enough to worry about already and you want to tell her her junkie sister is here. Just get rid of her.
Jamie Farmer, nice to meet you.
Jack Armstrong, hi.
Ben, I just finished looking at the court records. Jamie murdered Carly Farmer.
I've heard such great things.
Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast, everyone. I'm Christopher DeFilippis.
I'm Allison Pregler.
And I'm every woman. Sorry, I'm Matt Dale.
I thought it was Shaka Khan for a second. Oh my goodness. Today we're back. Hey everyone, we're back from hiatus. Hey.
Wasn't much of a hiatus, was it, Chris?
Well, not for us. I mean, I think we put out more content in the month of December during the hiatus than we have in like the last 6 months. It was crazy amount of content that we put out. So yeah, not for us. And if you've been following the feed, you've been having plenty to tide you over until this momentous occasion, the return of Quantum Leap 2023 now, not just 2022, 2023. Ooh.
Does that mean he's now Dr. Ben Song from the year 2023?
No, because he left in 2022.
No, he left in 2022. Now he's not shackled to any other time.
That's right. Like, wouldn't he technically be Dr. Ben Song from the year 1980/81 is what I think we figured out?
There's also, to be fair, there's and I expect more of Quantum Leap than this, but there's a lot of bad time travel shows which will just update the time that the character thinks they're from based on the aging of the character throughout the series. Doctor Who, I'm looking at you.
I was going to say, see also Simpsons.
Yeah. You're away for 5 years time traveling and somehow you think you're from the year 5 years later than the year you left. Obviously, he's from the year 2022.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to age 5 years and then go back to the same year you left, right? Then
you'd still think of yourself as being from the year 2022. I'm sure
it's true.
Sam Beckett thought of himself as being from the year 1995 the whole time. He wouldn't have thought himself as being from the far future time of 2000.
What is the time travel etiquette then? I guess that you are dated as a time traveler from the day that you first traveled.
Yeah, you can't say you're from 2023 because you've never experienced 2023, right? You're not from time anymore.
But technically, you're not. You traveled in 2023, but you've existed far before that. Presumably, unless you're a time traveling baby.
Yeah, but you don't. If you go on a plane and you're saying you're going from Brooklyn, New York to Swindon, England, you're not going to say you're coming from where you were born. You say you come from the last place you were, right?
Yeah. And the only point where that argument falls down is that if you then arrive in England and spend several years there, and then New York is taken over by somebody who renames it, would you say, just for ease's sake, you're from the place by its new name? Or would you continue to say you're from New York? Because
it's just like saying you're from Abruzzi, but it's not Abruzzi anymore.
It's like saying you're Etruscan instead of Italian.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry I started this line of conversation.
This is the great kind of debates we can have about time travel and locations. Let me just say something. I am so glad that new Quantum Leap is back, because you know what?
Yeah,
I missed it.
I'm
glad we got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, me too. I was surprised at how thrilled I was when the screener dropped so early this time. I was like, oh my God, it's back so much earlier than I anticipated. And
unexpected.
That's just a
episode
genuine
of Quantum Leap.
I usually note when we filibuster like this at the start of an episode and start talking about absolute rubbish, it's because we're really dreading talking about how terrible what we're about to talk about is. But I don't think that's going to be the case here.
No, it was a pleasant surprise seeing this. We don't know when the screeners are going to drop. There's not like a schedule for them. But sometimes with these first 8 episodes, it could be kind of last minute. And so sometimes we'd be like, I'd be on the back end refreshing it, being like, is it up yet? Is it up yet? Is it up yet? And then this time I didn't expect it 2 weeks early. And then you guys are like, hey, guess what's up on the NBC Media Village? I'm like, what? Excuse me?
What? Huh? I was at work.
I know what I'm watching tonight.
I was just about to, I just tucked myself up in bed quite late as well when it dropped. And I was just like, I should be asleep by now.
It's a little Christmas present.
What a beautiful Christmas present. Thank you, Quantum Leap team.
Hey, speaking of Christmas presents, they announced a renewal for season 2.
Wait, can I announce something first?
What?
Just
in
an
case
announcement
anyone... to precede the announcement?
To precede the announcement, if I may. May I?
Okay.
Do I have permission?
Okay,
fellow Leapers. Today we'll be talking about the season 1, episode 9, Fellow Travelers of Quantum Leap. Because we haven't even mentioned that yet. So, yeah.
Right, yeah.
This is episode 9, Fellow Travelers, in which Ben finds himself as a bodyguard. Ooh. But as Allison just mentioned, he's going to be finding himself in a lot more sticky situations because they just announced season 2.
Early season 2 renewal, baby!
And actually, we don't know how many episodes it's been renewed for, but presumably, hopefully this time it's a full season straight out of the gate, right? So we're not going to have this problematic thing, which they've dealt with admirably this season, but where they had to deal with, well, it's going to be 9 episodes, or maybe it's going to be 13, or maybe it's going to be 18, and they've had to play fast and loose with the arc. I'm really hoping that this time around it's just, we got 20 episodes or whatever it is, and they can have a nicely plotted out arc up front. Imagine what they could do with that. I'm very excited.
I feel like that's usually the etiquette is a full season order. If you're renewing it for a second season, that means they have faith that this is going to be something that is going to last them a while. I guess we won't know till they announce it, but I feel like it's probably going to be a full 22 or around that.
Yeah. Right. And even if they do announce that it's a full 22 or somewhere around there, we have to take into account that these are TV executives and they can pull the rug out from under us at any time without giving a crap. So
if that happens, just add a caption onto the end quickly. It'll be fine. Quantum Leap fandom is very forgiving of captions to end series.
Yeah. Dr. Ben Sung never returned home with a U.
They'd have to make it a little different. Dr. Ben Sung returned home again and again and again and again.
Dr. Ben Sonk. Come on.
Dr. Ben Sunk never saved Addison from whatever it was he was going to save her from.
Dr. Bong, now come on, guys.
Dr.
We're not even
Bong.
trying. And they go like, Dr. Ben Sung never leaped home. Pretty messed up, huh? And then credits. Like, what? Addison crying.
But we'll all hold out hope for the next 30 years that he and Sam are leaping together. And
they got like a whole like buddy movie going on.
The second reboot, the third iteration of Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, the poster is going to be Ben and Sam leaning with back to back with their arms folded. This guy.
Sam's upgraded to Captain Galaxy and Ben is Future Boy. His stalwart sidekick.
I think they would rock that tinfoil, is all I'm saying.
That'd be amazing.
And once again, Matt becomes integral to the next iteration. Forget Beyond the Mirror Image. He has the original Captain Galaxy hat. They're going to need that for the set.
Hell yeah.
This is great stuff. Now that we know that people from the show are listening, story ideas, you're welcome.
Yeah. When Ben leaps into a monkey again.
Diaper Monkey Part 2.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
I can't wait. We've already fleshed that one out in an earlier episode. We had the whole thing. So listen back. I've been listening back to some of our earlier stuff with the new series, with the, what are we calling, the Revival series, right? We decided to pick up Revival and Legacy series, I think, or Classic series for describing them instead of original and reboot. So anyway, I did.
People on Twitter call it Queep Boot. The Queep Boot.
Queep Boot. Ooh. That sounds like something medical.
Yeah.
I got a bit of Queep Boot, but I got some pills for it. I'll be all right.
Well, while you find those pills, I'm going to tell everybody that we have a major get for this episode. We've been sitting on this one since before the hiatus. We are going to be bringing you an interview with Georgina Reilly, who plays Janis Calavicci.
She's not evil. She's just misunderstood.
I really don't think she qualifies as the big bad. You wrote that she's the big bad. I don't think she's the big bad.
You notice I spoke around it with the
I'm stoked to hear the interview, though. I saw a little bit of it. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. Sorry to have missed that one, but it seems like you guys all had like a really great time.
Oh, we did.
She was so great to talk to. And she listens to the show as well.
Yeah.
So hi.
She asked for Allison by name. And Nanrissa Lee also said, "Where's Allison?"
They both did.
They both asked for you by name.
They were both on the same day, and I couldn't do it that day. And then, like, both of them were like, "Where's Allison?" And I'm like, "Oh, say sight, guys." I'm sorry if they're still listening. I'm sorry.
Come back.
Yeah, one thing I was really concerned about is that the Georgina interview would date a little bit, because we did it before this new episode, right after the Stand By Ben episode aired, right? I believe so.
Well, it's because we recorded it before Stand By Ben, based on the screener, so we hadn't even seen the trailer for that ended Stand By Ben, so we hadn't seen Janis being led into the headquarters
in cuffs.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that's the only thing that might date the interview a little bit, but I think on the whole, they didn't expose a hell of a lot in this episode that would make that interview out of date. So that's my roundabout way of saying it's still great. You got to listen to it because Georgina's hilarious and she was such a great person to talk to. And we're so happy that we finally got her. She was the last, I guess, of the big six, if you want to call it that we needed to get. Big seven, if you want to include Susan Deal. Great stuff. Sure. So stay tuned for that after the break. We're also very thrilled to be bringing you another interview from someone directly related to this episode. Matt, can you tell us a bit about who you spoke to?
Yeah, this came round very quickly. Dean Georgaris, one of the executive producers, was kind enough to put us in touch with Jamie Jackson. Jamie Jackson isn't a name that a lot of people be familiar with because she's very much behind the scenes. She's the composer who wrote the song from this episode, "Traveling On," and she's done a whole bunch of TV. She's one of those names where when you know the songs, you recognise her. But it was a lovely interview that she was very gracious with her time. We spoke to her, I think, about 24 hours after we found out her name. And she spoke to Albie and I for about half an hour about just the whole nature of the production, the background to the song, some really cool information there that, as somebody that doesn't know how music is created for TV, I found fascinating. She was delightful to talk to.
Yeah, I feel like we have the best of both worlds here. We have one of the principal cast members to talk to us about the show and things that might be a-brewing on the show, and we have like Quantum Leap podcast of yore, someone from behind the scenes telling us how the sausage is made, which is always really interesting to us fans as well. So I can't wait to hear both interviews with Georgina and Jamie again. After the break, you'll be hearing those. So wow, so much going on, and not least of which, we have a whole new episode to talk about. Why don't we do some first impressions? Allison, tell us your first impressions of Fellow Travelers.
Well, I was stoked to be watching some new Quantum Leap. I think that I noticed some changes and some improvements. I think that they're definitely listening to what people are saying. So they've added some things and changed some things. And I think that the leap was pretty good. I thought that the guest stars, Deborah Ann Wool and Carissa Lee Staples, were really, really strong guest stars, and I like their performances a lot.
Cool. How about you, Matt?
Quite similar to Allison, although I got to say I see this more of an organic change. I think for the most part, most of the episodes this season have been just slowly improving in the same ways, and I didn't notice anything specific that changed with this episode, but I did think it was important that they came back with a really strong episode post-hiatus, and they did. It's a great leap story. There's some fun stuff going on back at the project. As Allison said, some fabulous guest star turns. Yeah, just a really good episode all round. Very happy about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this was a very strong return. I think it was a good natural follow-up to the big reveal that we got at the end of Stand By Ben, that Ben is actually leaping to save Addison for some reason, somehow. We don't know about. But at the same time, it felt like a lot of the new things that the new Quantum Leap is trying to do story-wise. We have the leap in the project stuff, and they're trying to tie it together with some of the same themes. I think that they really pulled that off very well in this episode. And because of that, it felt like the leap plot and the project plot were much more integrated this time out, mainly because we're dealing with a lot of reaction to the reveal. So naturally, it's going to be like that. But I feel like we're at a natural point in the story where all of these disparate elements that we've been sort of weighing against each other are now going to start to come together, especially now that Janis is back at the project. I think that we're going to see a lot more synergy between the two halves of the show going forward. Anyway, that's the way it seems to me. So not only do I think we have a strong leap here, I think that we have like a sea change in the way the show might be going forward. So all positive stuff as far as I'm concerned. And terrific guest cast. So a lot of heady stuff, though. I mean, that being said, we're dealing with a lot of betrayal in this episode and feelings of anger. I felt like in many ways this was Caitlin's episode because she is once again at the nexus of all of it. Addison is the character that you see in both worlds, and she's dealing with it there, and she's dealing with it with Ben. And they had some really neat ways of having Ben speak to her about this huge reveal and the betrayal she feels, which was also pertinent to the leap at hand and the situation that he was in.
Yeah, and that I got to be honest, that surprised me a bit, and maybe it's me being naive, or maybe it's just the writers took it in a different and believable way than I was expecting. But I left the cliffhanger at the end of 108 thinking, wow, good for Ben. He's out there trying to save his fiancée. Isn't that good? Everyone's going to be happy about that. And at the start of the episode, I could not get why Addison was so upset by this betrayal.
Same.
And between the writing and the performance, it was sold so well. I got it. I absolutely got it. But I love being surprised by that. And I love the fact that it did that, and it wasn't something that I predicted, and yet it also was believable. So I was really happy with that. And the fact that, yes, at last we're seeing some nice parallels between what's going on at the project, even if this, at the project in inverted commas, because this is Addison and Ben together on the leap, but they're not really on the leap, talking about their relationship, and it's this is the same kind of betrayal stuff going on in the leap itself. It neatly dovetails, which is something that we've been talking about for the whole season. So that was such a good element to it.
Addison was so mad at him. Like, she's like, you hid this from me and didn't let me save myself. You think I'm this damsel in distress. So she's like, I'm getting my nails did. I'm getting on my jumpsuit. I'm going to look so good. I'm going to get in there, and he's going to be missing what he doesn't have. So, F you, Ben. You know what? I liked that they allowed her to be a little bit angry about it, because sometimes she was a little bit defensive of him in the beginning. So I think she was trying to overcompensate maybe a little bit and not blame him so much till she got the full story. I do think in this episode, it came off a little one note to me, and it was kind of, I don't know. I think there's a balance to be had. I did like the parallels there where she's like, you needed to let her save herself because she's thinking about their story. So I did like how those narrative themes tied together. I just wish that when Addison showed up, it seemed to kind of take over the scene. Like, she would interrupt things to be angry, and it kind of felt like the same thing through much of it. But I do like that they were giving Caitlin Bassett some more material to work with there, and I think that they didn't need Ernie Hudson at the beginning to state why she's upset. I feel like that's more of like telling than showing. But but when they actually got to it on the leap, her talking about it, I felt it gelled a little better.
I agree. I think that they did have some exposition-y stuff at the project like they want to do. I think that also might have been to get viewers back to speed from being away from the hiatus. So it's almost like a little bit of a recap, even though we had a bit of a recap at the beginning. This one started with a completely different saga cell than we've seen in the first 8 episodes.
Yeah, I think that was one of the improvements, because that's one of the things that people complain about a lot. Like, when I read Reddit or Twitter or whatever, like, people are like, this is really awkward. The saga cell's really awkward because they like add these pauses to it, and it's trying to do the original saga cell but different, and it just kind of, it felt a little awkward. And I feel like I think this was a positive change.
But is this a permanent change, or is it a one-off story so far to reintroduce us after the hiatus? I wouldn't be surprised if they went back to the previous one next week.
I don't know. I thought this was better, though. It felt like a little more their own thing. It was a little rushed, but I didn't mind it being short.
Just felt very unnecessarily detailed if it's going to be week after week. And possibly detailed to the point where it will age quickly. I don't know in what way, but something will happen that will mean that there'll be facts in there that are missing or turn out to be incorrect.
I wonder if what we're seeing is an evolution of the saga cell, kind of like we're seeing an evolution of the way the story is being told in the series itself, in the sense that the first 8, you have to basically sell, hey, this is Quantum Leap, but different, but the same, but different. So we're going to explain it in many of the same ways, but shoehorn our thing into it. Whereas this saga cell felt so much more organic because the show now has its own story to tell, its own themes to lean on, if that makes sense. And it doesn't so much have to be beholden to selling someone on, hey, this is new Quantum Leap, as opposed to, hey, this is where we are now. And I think that's a small but marked shift in the way I hope they're trying to present the show going forward. It's more of its own thing, as opposed to a rehash of something you once loved.
I think some of that must just come down to confidence in the production, in the feedback that they're getting from viewers, and so on. I'm not sure for me, I'm not sure it necessarily represents a change in the show so much as, okay, we can breathe easy now. We've got an audience. We don't need to keep talking about the original series and what is or isn't the same or different. This is its own entity, and we're standing behind that.
And maybe that confidence you speak about is born from the fact that they did get that early season 2 pickup. So they feel like they can just play in their own universe now.
Which is great.
Yeah. We can really start building our own lore, our own following, and not be so beholden to what has come before. And I have a feeling we're going to be hearing less and less about the original project, especially now that we sort of have Janis in-house. They do mention Al by name in this episode and have sort of a cheeky callback to his fashion sense. But, I mean, that was basically it. And aside from maybe Ziggy ever waking up and actually speaking in this, I feel like this thing is going to go on its own way from here on in without being so beholden to the legacy of Sam Beckett. Even though it'll always be there, it's not a focal point.
Has it been a focal point?
I guess.
Have they been beholden to the old series?
I guess not. I mean, in my head, yes, because of the whole Janis.
People have had a lot of theories about it, but it wasn't really. We had Beth show up.
We had Magic talk about how he got leaped into.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We had Sam Stratton show up. With no real connection.
That was under the old showrunners, though. That was.
Yes.
Yeah. That was Mach 1. I think we're in Mach 2. Maybe we're entering Mach 3. But Stratton, you got that right.
I do think that they have added things in that people have been talking about. Though Ian was working on the leap.
Yep.
Yes.
Bare minimum. The project. Ian was working on the leap, and I loved it. I love that they were trying to figure out what was going on. It felt like they cared a little bit about what was happening on Ben's end. It helped to tie the future and the past together better than it had been before.
And the fact that they also had Ian able to express more of their own identity in the course of the dialogue. I don't know if you guys found that clunky.
Look, when I was 8 years old, I realized that about half of the world just blindly accepted as truth the construct of gender that is both artificial and profoundly limiting. So yeah, I am pretty suspicious of basically anything that people say as a fact.
I thought it was okay.
I'm trying to be positive here. It was a little clunky. Every sentence kind of seemed like a little soundbite to state something.
Yeah.
To be like, and I think that people who are on drugs are vilified, and I learned about gender identity at this age, and it's a little bit just kind of stating it rather than having it be part of the story. But it is a little bit difficult with Ian or people at the project because we don't really see much of their lives outside of them at the project, so it's kind of hard to organically put these things in.
Yeah, and maybe that'll change going forward as well. Again, now that we're not having the chase that we did, I'm really hoping that part of the story is over, of the cat and mouse, because that to me was the thing that annoyed me the most. And I couldn't tell you the sense of relief I felt, not just when I saw them bringing Janis into the project in handcuffs, but when I saw the picture of her coming into the project in handcuffs in the promo materials. I'm like, thank God. Thank God. We're going to bring this cast together finally. It's a long time coming, and I think it's past due.
Just before we move on from that point, you mentioned about the clunkiness of some of that expository dialogue that's still occasionally there. That moment where we, presumably for brand new viewers, we get a very quick potted view of the kind of character Ben is through a flashback to episode 104. Did anyone else feel that was crowbarred in?
Then, remember what happened last time? Flashback shoot.
I know I give people the benefit of the doubt, but...
Like Tammy Jean, the damsel in distress who turned out to be a drug lord?
Point taken.
And I'm like, what?
That was... I know...
It was very CSI, wasn't it?
Sometimes that kind of thing has to be done, but it did stick out as this is a moment for a brand new viewer. Let's hope they move on from that. We might pick up some new viewers, Jen.
I do think that Ben and Deborah Ann were the strongest parts of this episode. I did really like the leap, and I liked how they've tied in the traveler theme through the show. I mean, you can see that in, obviously, the song's called Traveling On. travel on? There's travel in there. And then, like, Fellow Travelers is the name of the episode. It's the name of her album. Ben was called Traveler in O Ye of Little Faith. Obviously, there's the immigration story going on. You would call that a traveler, I would think. So, yeah, I can see the themes of the show weaving throughout it.
Yeah. And yes, it is traveling on. Sorry, I just had to double check.
Traveling on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that she did a great job. I liked her and her sister, and I thought like it was a nice leap story bringing these two together, and another one that kind of emphasizes rehabilitation versus sending someone to jail, getting their comeuppance. So it was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was all prepared for, and I guess maybe anybody else might have seen it coming, but because I was thinking so much of the King Thunder episode,
right?
I was waiting for Trevor to be revealed as the bad guy all along.
Yeah.
So it wasn't much of a twist, but it was a nice twist that it turned out that, you know, he really wasn't who they thought he was.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be the one for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought, like, I was like, he just seems too skeevy. At the moment that he showed up and he was giving Ben that dirty look, I'm like, he did it. But he didn't.
But then
do it.
when they reveal him as the bad guy halfway through, you know he's the red herring.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, okay, it's either the blonde lady that was what did she do? She was a manager?
The backing singer.
Oh, she was a backing singer. Right. Because... yeah, she was one of the backing singers. I was like, it's either her or like one of the friend ladies that was talking with her about like, ew, your sister's here. Get her out of here.
Yeah. And that harkens back to Quantum Leap of yore.
Classic Quantum Leap.
You have three characters, you know that, you know, you can eliminate two of them pretty readily. So you know it's going to be. But I like the fact that they did weave a lot of that Traveler stuff into it because once again, it felt like they were leaning into the confidence that they have that they're going to have a lot more stories to tell. So, I mean, it's telling you to settle into the fact that Ben's not coming home anytime soon. And to have the character settle into the fact that maybe he's not going to be coming home anytime soon, especially if he's got this unforeseen mission that he doesn't even know why he's left in the first place. So he's obviously got a job to do. And that's another thing that I thought was a good turn of events in the episode. Thematically, again, that sense of betrayal, but also, I mean, the fact that you can tell Ben, being Ben, probably only did what he did with the best of intentions. And when he says that he did it to save Addison, like to him, that's the most noble of intentions.
Yeah.
And to her, that's like, well, fuck you. You don't think I can take care of myself? We're a team. And I'm as a man who's been married for close to 30 years, it took me a long time to learn that, you know, the person you love doesn't need to be taken care of and rescued. They need to be loved and supported and trusted. And Ben just is falling into like it's just a classic guy thing. It's just like, no, let me worry about that. I'm here for that. That's why I'm here. Well, are you? I mean, you're the pacifist who's more, you know, in t-shirts and jeans in front of a computer, and she's been to Afghanistan. I don't think she needs rescuing, Ben.
On a different topic, I just got to say quickly, I've been watching too much Quantum Leap because, Chris, for a second there, I thought you were going to say, as a guy who's been married 4 times...
like, not quite yet.
When did your previous... I haven't heard about this.
Oh, no, Al came out of the imaging chamber. Now I've been married 4 times. Listen back to Random Measures, everyone.
Which one was Jana?
Yeah. Sorry, that was apropos of nothing. Carry on.
Yeah, I think that Addison is right to be upset because without knowing why any of this is going on, she doesn't understand why he wouldn't just tell her and let her save herself. Like, why does she have to be rescued? But as they pointed out in this episode, as we pointed out before, he said in his message, this is bigger than you and me. So I don't think it's just about saving Addison. I think that's part of it, but I think there's something else going on where he felt he had to do this without her and without the team. I'm very curious to see what it is. I was listening to the Stand By Ben after show that just got posted on our YouTube channel. And Hayden actually pointed out something I hadn't thought about, but it is kind of obvious. If this, whatever happened in the future, why does Ben need to leap to do it instead of just waiting for it to happen? Why is this something that requires leaping? Curious.
I hope that Ben does have a good reason for keeping Addison in the dark, and I think they've been setting something up nicely with this whole Ziggy's capable of predicting what people might do next. It may be, whether Ziggy's even aware that she's being used for this or not, it may be they've done some work to say, well, actually, if we tell Addison what she's going to do, or what's going to happen to her, and she tries to save herself, this is the string of events that's going to happen, and it's going to make things even worse. And instead of just Addison dying, lots of other people will die. So we have to keep Addison in the dark, because otherwise she will be the agent of her own destruction. The writers are smart enough that they can do something.
The possibilities.
They call it a predestination kind of paradox? Yeah, predestination paradox? Or
Exactly. Yeah. If you do nothing, something bad will happen. If you try and let Addison save herself, something even worse will happen. Yeah, I mean, why leap? I hadn't thought of that. Hopefully, again, there's a smart reason for that.
I mean, it may be something that he couldn't do as Ben. He had to be someone else to do this at another point in time. Like, it's something that he couldn't simply do as himself in the present.
Yeah, but do the Mission Impossible thing, but get a latex mask on, pretend to be someone else.
Or jump into the untested reboot of a time machine that you know you're going to lose your memory in. Don't tell anyone what's going on and be sneaky about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a way to go.
Or, before Addison dies, or whatever it is that happens to Addison, Ben is going to die, and there is no way around that. So Ben can't simply wait around to save Addison, because he's not going to make it that far.
Oh, that's a good...
I haven't listened to the after show. I don't know if Hayden talks about that as well, but there's got to be some kind of barrier that he's trying to get past by leaping.
Well, there are a couple of things in the series that point to that, and also something that Janis says in this episode, and I want to talk about that a little bit too. I have some issues with just the flow of time between the project and the leap, and we've talked about that before. It seemed pretty evident here, but I really enjoyed the scene between Janis and Jen, and sort of that tete-a-tete that they were doing, mainly because I love Georgina as Janis, and I really love Nanrissa as Jen. As I said earlier, before the hiatus, Jen is quickly becoming my favorite character if they give her good stuff to do. I just think Nanrissa has great screen presence. And the one thing that sort of gave me a chill is when Janis says to Jen, "You're asking the wrong question."
You were doing really well until you asked that question instead of the one you should be asking.
Which is?
Why did Ben come to me when he had all of you? My dad had people he could trust at Quantum Leap. Do you? Because Ben sure didn't seem to think so.
Why didn't he trust any of you?
Yeah.
So that leads to yet maybe another speculation. We know that Ben is trying to leap to some unspecified point in the future, right? I mean, they reiterated that in this episode, that he was sort of slingshotting to a point in the future where, I mean, Sam never tried to leap into the future. It was always about within his own lifetime in the past, and they only alluded to the fact that he might be able to leap into the future in mirror image, and a throwaway line in mirror image. So obviously it's still something to try to get, beyond your present, right? So could it be that he saw a future in which he and the rest of the staff of Project Quantum Leap were working towards bad ends, and he needed to go outside of that structure to circumvent it, to get there, to prevent something that they're all complicit in, that they don't know is coming down the pike?
Maybe Ben forgot to record some football with Joe Montana. So he needed to, he leaped into him to see the game firsthand. That's his goal anyway.
I think that Allison's tired of the speculation.
I'm just saying, there's lots of possibilities. We can't rule anything out.
Wow.
Well, mind blown. That's it. Podcast over. Let's hang it up.
We got more hologram effects. There was noticeably more hologram effects.
Oh, that was amazing. So happy about that.
Hell yeah. I loved when Addison just they do this effect where she kind of collapses in. I feel like that's a pretty good update of what they used to do with the door.
Yeah.
So she just folds out of nowhere and appears sitting next to him, or when she pops in next to Carly as she's doing her dress or singing rehearsal.
Yeah, that's great. Her getting to the stage by popping out, popping back in it, but it's not a pop, like you say. It's more like a folding in and out of reality. It's so good.
They did sort of an update of what they used to do with the jump cuts to make it look, a little bit nicer. And I think it is noticeable that they had a lot more time to polish this episode than they've had in the past, because they were really struggling with the schedule and reshoots and delays and stuff like that. So I feel like the show was really hurting because of that. But you could tell they had more time to polish the effects. The color correction, I think, was a lot nicer than it has been. There was sort of a yellow tint to it, but I feel like in appropriate places. It also felt very appropriate to the time. The 70s has a lot of like yellows and browns and oranges. So, I feel like it looked a lot nicer than it has been. So, I think that the show had time to improve.
I do wonder, again, this is going to be me coming across as being happy with what I've seen, but just being cautious before I get too optimistic about the rest of the series, is if some of the reason for the hologram effects and the fact that there were so many this week is, again, for the new viewers that maybe have heard about this show and want to watch it, and there's no way of saying, oh, hey, Ben, I'm just your friendly hologram popping in from the future. So you explain it by showing it and hope that people figure it out. That happened in episode 6 quite a few times as well, because obviously that was originally going to be episode 1. There were more hologram effects just to introduce the concept. So
possibly.
I do wonder if they might cut them back again in future because, hey, we've reminded everyone Allison's a hologram. We don't need to see it all the time.
I hope not. I hope
not, because it's great.
I hope that they capitalize on making her more of an other in this scene. The fact that she, is from a different time and isn't physically there, I think adds to interesting visuals and interesting storytelling possibilities that they could capitalize on. I did really like that Ian was using their true crime passion to try and solve some stuff by looking at like the handwriting and stuff like that. I feel like maybe a way to tweak it a little bit would have been for Addison to be there when Ben is looking at the note and then say like, hey, I'm getting a scan of this with the hand link. Ian, can you check this out and see if this matches the handwriting, see who wrote this? And then you could kind of tie those scenes together so that she's working to solve the leap, doing some hologram stuff, some future stuff, and then you tie it into the project as well. So they're kind of working in tandem and it doesn't feel repetitious, like they have to repeat information to each other. Like I think maybe that would have been a way to slightly tweak it.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been a way to go. I think that they were just trying to figure out also maybe a way to keep you suspicious of Trevor, too, because he was big in that scene and he's holding it up and he's got the letters. So I think that they wanted Trevor to be more the focus in that scene as the red herring. But what you're saying, I think hopefully they'll do more stuff like that in the future. We've spoken about that because we see them watching Addison in real time back at the project and actually speaking to her through microphones at some point, telling her, don't tell Ben, tell them this, or don't say that, or whatever. They're trying to direct her. And it would just be natural for them to cut back and forth if they establish that that's the dynamic going on. So,
I think that's a way to tie things together so it feels a little less disjointed.
Yeah, like Ian saying, get me a scan of that. I need that,
Yeah, and if they wanted to incorporate that kind of stuff with the overarching story, it could be like they're helping Addison out and then Addison needs some information and they're like, we can't get it to you because Janis is hacked into the system or whatever. You're kind of on your own at the moment. Or maybe Ian has to like hide out somewhere and try and get this information remotely and get it to Addison while some other thing is going on. Something where like these stories are kind of together, but they're still forwarding the overall plot.
And Allison, I just want to pick up on something you said there that has just, it's added an extra layer onto a moment that I knew I wanted to talk about at some point in this episode, and I'm going to talk about it now because there's a moment in this episode that it gave me chills, and it just gave me chills because it was such a perfectly composed shot, and everything about it for me just absolutely came together. And I've watched this shot again and again and tried to figure out what it was that excited me about it so much. And I'd actually missed the fact that one of the things that excited me about it so much is that it's a shot that involves Addison being properly involved in what's going on. And it's the bit right at the start where Addison's just arrived on the stage, and she looks up, and we're looking down on her, and she says, "Ben, that light's coming down." And I love the composition of that shot. At that point, you've got just a lovely action-packed moment from Addison. You've got Ben running behind her in the background, out of focus through this pool of light, and you've got this beautiful music going on in the background, which for a moment it almost stops being a song and starts to become soundtrack that happens to be using a voice. And it just, for 1.5 seconds, it's just, I sat up and went, wow, this is a properly polished, amazing show, and I'm going to love the heck out of the next 45 minutes. I hadn't even stopped to think about the fact that also this is like one of the most involved that Addison's been, like actually just jumping straight into the action to say, Ben, something's happening over here, which is exactly what we were saying should have happened in 108. She should have been round the corner saying, Ben, this way. And that's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah.
I love that bit.
Yeah, I think that looked great. It was an exciting moment, and also, Addison's right in the thick of it. She's not right next to Ben. She's looking around. She can be on stage while this is going on because no one's going to see what she's doing. She's not going to get hit by the light, so she can just stand there and say like, "Hey, this is coming down. You got to do something." So I think like they need more of that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I think that they're going in the right direction here. Like that her own issues were kind of tied into what was going on. Like, I think sometimes she kind of just, she was a little overbearing with some of it, but I do think that it was, the leap was really strong. And I think like, they did get some great moments. I did like when Ben and Addison were talking outside on the balcony together about this. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some wonderful moments between them, especially there's this whole line where Ben says,
"We can't change the past. We can't change the choices we've made, but we can change what we do moving forward. We do this one step at a time, together from now on."
It was sort of that reconciliation that we needed, because what I liked, again, about the complementary thematic elements in this was that you had moments where Ben could speak directly to Addison. And I think I mentioned this already, but there was also times in this where Ben is going against Addison, specifically in trusting Jamie. Addison is adamant that Jamie is not to be trusted. She obviously did the murder, and Ben, you're wrong. The reason most killers get away with it is because they don't seem like killers. So, and he trusts his gut. To me, that was a very Sam moment there, where he kind of bucks what Ziggy says and what the odds should be and just goes with how he feels the leap needs to proceed so that he can do what he has to do. So they even used these thematic elements to bring in some elements that made me think of the original Quantum Leap and some of the stuff I loved about the original Quantum Leap, but at the same time having that reconciliation at the end. And again, I hope that now that everybody's on the same page, we'll start moving more in lockstep with the Leap story and the project story, and have it seem like they're all working together. This is something that I had mentioned in a couple of interviews too, especially in the Georgina interview, because she asked us, what do we want to see? So you'll hear me reiterating some of these points in the interview. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, or will be repeating myself. I'll be repeating myself in the future.
Time travel.
What'd you tell her we want to see? I didn't hear it. I'll have to listen to the interview, I guess.
Listen to the interview. But she was curious. I think, like you had mentioned up top, Allison, that it seems that the writers and the showrunners are listening to the fans, and the actors are too. Georgina's not the only one who's asked us, what would we like to see? We're the fans. What do you want to see? And I had given Georgina that answer about the characters working more in lockstep with each other. And she said, I think you'll be happy with the way things are going to be going. Very nebulous, but I mean, we see that she's at the project now, so she might have just been alluding to that. Another thing, we spoke to the director of photography, and I'm blanking on her name, but she was a riot. Albie and I spoke to her for a good 45 minutes, and she said, what do you guys want to see? She said, Chris, what if you had your opportunity, what would you want? And I said, you don't answer to me. And she said, but we do answer to you because you're the fans. You're the ones that are watching. So I said, yeah, if you really want to know, incorporate some more of the bold colors from the original project. Give us, some of the Quantum Leap signature instead of just the CSI background. And she said, no, that's a good point. And there's nothing to say that we can't do that in the future.
Although you say there's nothing to say we can't. One of the few missteps in this episode for me, and Chris, you mentioned it earlier, and then you went straight on. But that's the second opportunity to talk about this. Al's questionable taste in fashion was never a questionable taste in fashion.
He was a hero, using QL technology to save countless lives, while making some pretty questionable fashion choices.
It was absolutely in step with the fashion of the near future that we saw in Kill in Time, in The Leap Back. That was unnecessary retconning, and it makes me feel like the original series now is not remembered as brightly coloured and crazy, but it's just Al. Al was unusual and had dodgy fashion.
I think maybe Al had dodgy fashion even for future fashion. Who knows how the trends were going at the time?
Maybe.
I feel like maybe, but I do feel like that line was trying to explain why is it so different? Why did he look so different than what we're seeing now? Which I don't know, didn't really sit quite well with me either. But Al, it was always kind of nebulous. Sam always made fun of his fashion, but maybe he didn't remember that fashion was that bad. I don't know. Sam's fashion wasn't quite that outrageous when he leaped home briefly. So I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? Fashion is cyclical, right? Like, I have some pictures of me as a toddler, like in kindergarten, first grade, family pictures of me in the most hideous little leisure suit you've ever seen. But that was 1974, and at that time, it was the height of fashion. It was not dodgy at all. You look at that picture in, 1980, 90, 2000, 2022, and you say, what the hell were we thinking? That sure is some dodgy fashion. So it's all
maybe
subjective.
The brief period in 1995 to 1999 when that fashion was in, it was cool, and then it wasn't anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So
there were two ways I passed that line in my head just to make it acceptable for me. One of them was, he had questionable fashion choices, but so did everyone in the mid-90s. And the other is that maybe that's how kids were dressing back in the mid-90s, and Al was old enough that he should have known better and should be dressing a little bit more straight-laced, like the senators in Honeymoon Express.
Okay.
Something like that. But it sat as unnecessary, and they could have just glossed over it. But
you think Jen, after that one weird harness outfit she wore, you think she has the right to be calling him out on his fashion choices?
I think the Snooki bump was worse than the horn.
The Snooki bump, yeah, that was really the topping there, and the cherry on top. That particular hacker look going on.
I'm just going to go and don't edit this. Keep this all in, because I'm just thinking. I'm thinking this through, and I've just realised everything I've said for the last 2 minutes is absolute rubbish. It did need explaining, because in the last episode we saw what the mid-90s looked like, and it definitely did not look like mid-90s Quantum Leap. Stand By Ben actually introduced a whole question that needed explaining. So. Okay, that's fine. At least there was a reason for that line.
They wouldn't leap into a time the project... I always kind of headcanoned it in my head that it just looked... It looked weird at the project because it was project stuff. You got like a time machine and all this like other futuristic stuff. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, and
then again, I guess Sex World and the electric floaty cars, or I don't know.
And you were basically in the episode that you're speaking of, Matt. They were almost prisoners in a school uniform, being chased by guards in guard uniforms. So it wasn't exactly representative of the mid-90s. It was a very isolated pocket.
Is this going to be like Star Trek going to the 90s when they're like, what about the eugenics wars and all that? I don't know.
They're just going to have to avoid the 90s for leaps, or when they have leaps. Yeah, just have them in situations where they don't really see other people. That's not going to happen, clearly.
Because so many people are asking what we want to see on the show. I know I'm almost never vocal about what I think, but here's what I'll say about this episode. I don't want to see time cops. I don't want to see people being arrested and taken to the project to be held in the brig or what? I don't know. There's a jail at the project. I don't think
but no
people who
waterboarding.
run scientific projects should have any authority to arrest people and chase down suspects and stuff. And I feel real bad. I want to be positive. I hated that scene. I hated everything about it. And I feel like the actresses are so incredibly kind to us. I don't want to hate what their characters are doing, but I just don't think Quantum Leap should have anything to do with cop stuff. It just doesn't feel like anything to do with the premise.
I'll agree with you there. I just think that the Janis thing, anyway, I'm hoping the Janis thing is a special circumstance because they're trying to solve the mystery of why Ben leapt. I don't think that they're going to get into the business of becoming like a time cop organization. If they do, oh, God help us all.
But they did. Jen went and arrested her. Janis was like, are you going to arrest me? She expected that she would arrest her. And she did. So this is apparently known that she has the authority to arrest people. And then even if she had that authority, why did they take her to the project? Why do they have jail at the project? At a scientific time travel organization. That just seems completely antithetical to what Quantum Leap is.
It doesn't have to be a jail. It's just got to be a door with a lock on it and a guard outside.
An interrogation room? I mean, what is that about? They're going to take her into the conference room in her zip ties and then shine a light on her and then grill her about what's going on. And but that just, ugh.
They can't involve, they can't involve the military or the Pentagon or whatever because nobody knows what's going on.
What was with the people with the military fatigues bringing her inside then?
Well, they must work at their guards at the project.
The project always seems to have some military connections because, I mean, we saw Navy personnel all the time whenever we saw the project in the old show. So, and there were people in military fatigues bringing Janis in. So who do they work for?
I'm going to just say I have no issue with, I mean, I don't Time Cops specifically, but I have no issue with the new series doing something that is very different to what the original series did, precisely because I was one of the people saying that kind of thing about Deep Space Nine back in the day, and other shows that have had reboots and revivals that have taken a different tactic, and I've been burnt before by saying, this won't work because it's not like the show I remember. And I know that's not what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm happy with that. I've got 100 episodes of Quantum Leap as I remember it that I love. And as long as they do it well, I've got no issue with the new series doing something that does have some interrogations and some cool stuff that we would never have seen Gushy getting involved in back in the day.
Oh, Gushy would have just annihilated someone. You would have gone in there and you would have breathed on him.
That's right.
I'll tell you anything.
I was going to say, you want me to open this door, don't you?
He's like, I'm going to be the bad cop and the bad cop. I don't think this is the same thing as doing a different kind of thing. I think it is the opposite of what Quantum Leap's message was. I don't think we should be seeing cops interrogating people about time travel shit. If that's the road that the show goes on, I don't know if I can follow it, to be honest.
I think as long as there's a good reason for it, and like Chris said, this is coming round to ultimately that narrative thrust of why did Ben leap, how's he involved with Janis, and they've got themselves into a point where they can't just ask her nicely. There has to be a little bit of pressure.
That's an issue with the story to me, to be honest.
And just to Matt's point, for the record, they didn't arrest Janis. Jen just paid her goons more. So they became...
She arrested... Okay, if it's not an arrest, then it is a kidnapping.
Yeah, it's a kidnapping.
And that's even worse. But she said, like, are you going to arrest me? And then she's like, oh, Uncle Sam pays more or whatever. Like, clearly they're acting like she has the authority to arrest her. If she doesn't have the authority to arrest her, then they have kidnapped someone and taken them to the project. Which, why? No. That's bad.
Good point.
Yeah, good point.
Good point.
I heard some dialogue, and I only watched this once, so please correct me if I'm wrong. There was something about an extradition treaty with Belize they were talking about. I thought they were saying there was no extradition treaty.
There's no extradition. So there's no legal route.
But I looked it up, and I think there is. But if there is no extradition treaty, if that's what they're going for in the dialogue, so that's what they said, right?
Yeah, that was so she could hide there. They couldn't go through any legal channels to get her back.
Yeah, she went there because she couldn't be extradited. So that means that they kidnapped her, flagrantly broke the law, took her on a plane, zip-tied her, and took her to the project, either illegally or not legally, once they arrived in the States. That doesn't come off kind of sinister to you?
She drugged her mum and blew her house up. Who cares?
That's sinister too. It shouldn't be in the show. That's what I'm saying. I get where you go in the story from there, but why is it in the story to begin with? And she went to Belize because there was nuclear power there or something?
No, there was a new power plant. So she'll have all the power she needs to reach Ben. So she's going to continue to work at cross purposes with us.
And then everyone kind of smirked at each other for a while and acted smug. And then they were like, in 2 seconds, like, yeah, she's in Belize. And then, oh, look, she's right over there.
Yeah, and that's the other issue I have with this. A direct flight from LA to Belize is about 4.5 hours if you go directly commercial. So you got to figure they got to prep the jet. They have to get, so say you can take a half hour off of that. All right. I'm just talking in air time. So that's 4 hours to get to Belize, say 5 because they got to prep everything. Okay. And then they have to find her. Right? So how long is that? And then they have that conversation, which appears to have lasted all of 15 minutes. And then they have to get back to the airport, back to the project. So you're talking about probably somewhere like an 11, 12-hour turnaround time. And it was broad daylight every time she was talking to Janis. Jen and Janis were having their chat. Meanwhile, the entire leap takes place, it looks like mid-afternoon to overnight and early morning. And I guess are they there the whole day because they do have the concert later that night? Right? I'm trying to figure it out. So
it must be just over a day in leap time. There's a big old gap towards the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when Jen and Janis had their little tete-a-tete. And that's another issue that we have with this because the dramatic needs of the story sort of outweigh the logical needs of where are we in the leap as opposed to where are we in the project stuff.
I went through the same research route as you and came to the same conclusion. And it's one of those things that in the original series, aside from when does Al ever get to sleep, it was never something that we had to worry about. If Sam had a 3-day leap, whatever, some stuff happened at the project for 3 days. In the new series, they've got to try and tie events and the chronology of events in one time period to the chronology of events in the other. And this is the only time that it's been a little bit suspect, but not too much, but a little bit. But 9 episodes in, that this is the first time that I felt that. Usually the length of time that passes at the project has been fairly consistent with time on the leap, which is pretty impressive, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I noticed it more this episode, maybe because of the whole night and day aspect of it. It was literally night and day. And another thing because I liked the featured music so much in this episode, I noticed the soundtrack a lot more in this episode as well. And it did not fit in at all. Like everything about the soundtrack was just so brooding and like gloomy.
Oh, you're talking about the scoring?
Yeah, the scoring. it was just so intense and like it just didn't fit in with the feel of the episode. It was so generic. And I think that the episode suffered because of it, especially because you had such good turns with Deborah singing and, you brought someone to actually, create and produce an original song for the episode. You think that the music would be more of a star in this, but the scoring was just the same sort of generic action scoring that we've been hearing throughout the whole thing. I'm hoping that they evolved that. Once again, I said it before, I'll say it again. Somebody get Velton on the phone, please.
I will just mention, and this doesn't override your point, but Deborah lip syncing, not Deborah singing.
Oh, so they had a different singer.
Yeah.
I kind of noticed that, and because I just thought Deborah Ann Wool was a really good singer. I was very surprised. Well, whether it was her singing or not, I mean, she would have been lip syncing on set anyway, regardless, right?
Well, they did a good job of getting a singer that sounded believably like her because I wasn't sure if it was her or not.
But I noticed that Deborah she seemed to be emoting a lot more than the actual song called for. So she seemed to be much more dramatic. She seemed to be like she was belting it out on stage, where the song was actually pretty staid and mellow. So it just, that was a little bit of a juxtaposition to me. It was a little bit of a disconnect.
I didn't sense that, but I definitely noticed the scoring seemed to take a step back, and I wasn't going to bring it up because I've talked about it before. I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm being nitpicky all the time, but I did notice it sounded a bit more generic action this time around. I think that the composer that they have is capable of creating a great score, though, because we've heard in some other episodes, Salvation or Bust, and some of the other ones, the Earthquake one, I thought had a really great score to it. So I don't know, maybe they just decided to go a little more generic this time around. But I did notice it didn't quite gel as well. I did like the songs that they chose from the time, though.
Sure.
All of the needle drops I thought were really good. I liked Black Betty. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, that reminded me of, what's that Johnny Depp movie where he's the drug dealer? That's the first time I ever heard that song, so I always think of that movie. Someone out there knows what I'm talking about. And they started with I'm Every Woman, I believe, right? So didn't we hear that also in the bar in the Earthquake episode?
No.
I don't think so.
I felt like we did. But this has got to be the Shaka Khan version because it's 1979 and not the Whitney Houston version, which I think was a later remake.
The bar was I Get So Emotional.
Oh, okay. That's right. So I was thinking Whitney Houston because she also sings I'm Every Woman, I believe.
You were thinking of The Bodyguard.
Yeah, I guess.
Ben's a bodyguard in this.
Sexy bodyguard. Thank you very much, Mr. Jack
Sexy bodyguard.
Armstrong. Did we say Jack Armstrong?
Yeah, he was the sexy bodyguard. I felt a little bit cheated in that the preview that they did for coming up on this season. Clearly they only had this episode and parts of, if not the whole of the next episode to work with. But they showed like this dramatic kind of cliffhanger with him like bleeding from his side, like, oh no, Ben's hurt. What's going to happen? And then he gets stabbed in this episode. It is kind of a dramatic moment. And then they cut away to some other stuff, I think some project stuff or something. And then they come back. And then it's like, it's fine. I didn't go to the hospital. You got a concert to finish. It's cool. He's sitting up and he's like, like it didn't matter. And it was like, it feels like a little bit like you need to spread these things out if it's not going to really mean anything. Yeah. He's already been shot and stabbed in the first 9 episodes, just as asides.
Well, he kind of shot himself in
He shot himself in a comedic way. That one was at least that was funny. But this kind of felt like a little bit of a cop out. I guess they were just trying to be dramatic, but it felt like a really like comical contrast to be like, oh no, I'm dying, and then like, it's fine. What's up, Addison? We gotta listen to the concert.
Well, Addison did say you're going to be okay, and she would know. I mean, wasn't she a field medic?
She knows.
Yeah.
Was she a field medic? She just learned something, I think, from someone, like reviving someone in Afghanistan or something. I don't think she was a medic.
Well, I don't know. I feel like that she's got some kind of on-the-ground training about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, maybe we'll learn more in the next episode, because that one involves medical stuff.
Oh, sure.
I did want to say there's a new hand link in this episode, or a redesign.
It's sort of a redesign, yeah. I had noticed that too. It's not so much the sides, but we get a better view of the top, right?
That's new. It was like whiter, like it was lighter, it looked like to me, and it had like buttons on top, and that's not what it looked like before.
It wasn't, you know what, it was more akin to honeycombs. So when I kind of paused it because number one, it had a digital display with text, and it said mute, so she was muting the hand link, so I guess you could,
that was different than what it looked like.
And what it reminded me of is the only time that we saw Addison in the imaging chamber, she had those hexagonal plates all around her, and it looked like they were borrowing from that look for the top of the hand link and the hologram or the holographic interface that we know is on the top of that hand link because we've seen it throw up a picture of Sam before, and I guess also in Decent Proposal.
Yeah, maybe it's supposed to be kind of a honeycomb design because they have like a little mini holographic display on it, so maybe that's what they were trying to do there.
So it's a definitely, it's a very subtle evolution as far as I'm concerned. And if it is sort of a holographic display, it can also go away, and we can just have the regular sort of sleek round with the center circle that we've gotten so far. So that way we don't have to change our logo. I'm just saying, it'd be more convenient for us.
Very handy.
I like seeing them evolve it. It feels very much in the spirit of Quantum Leap, and that the hand link is always kind of changing until they find like that's the one. It'd be great if like season 2 is just completely different than season 3, completely just shuffle through hand links.
Yeah. You get more merch that way, right? If they're going to sell Quantum Leap merch.
Get some merch, please.
Yeah, get replica props working on it, you know? They can create a bunch of the new hand links.
So, yeah, I mean, I thought that was a neat little fan moment that we could cling to and see what's going on there. And
yeah, I think they're just trying to figure it out, just like they did before, you know, like they're like, wait, we don't have any buttons. What is she pressing? Okay, maybe we add some buttons. Oh, maybe if we add like this sort of honeycomb interface, it'll kind of match the imaging chamber, and then like that's how they project the like maps and things from there. You know, I think they're thinking of like, what are some practical things? What might be some cool aesthetic things? What can we do with this?
Yeah, and let's see how it evolves as the season goes on. I hope that they make the hand link a little bit more of a player. I guess maybe because to me the hand link was such an iconic symbol of the classic series that Addison's hand link is very pedestrian. It's very workaday, right? It's not. It doesn't have the flair. It doesn't have the questionable fashion choices, right?
I liked the one that they used in the original pilot more. Yeah, like I liked the look of that. I think that was pretty fun. And I do think that in the Earthquake one and in the July 13, 1985, they used the hand link more in that to like do like projections and other kinds of stuff, mostly because they were both pilots. Mm-hmm. So it'd be nice if maybe they incorporated that a little more, but they don't have to do it just to do it either. Like, I don't think it needs to be just like an effects extravaganza, but it'd be nice if, you know, they incorporated a little more, again, with more hologram stuff, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like hologram is such an integral part of this story. There's always going to be some natural storytelling reason to show off a holographic effect or a hand link effect. In other shows, I think it could be a little bit too much. But I think here they have a perfect opportunity to do it in a much more organic way. So why not? Why not make it fun and futuristic?
Yeah. Have fun with it, guys.
Come on, gang. So... Well, I don't know about you guys. I don't know how much more I have to say about Fellow Travelers. Do you fellow travelers have any final observations?
Yeah, I liked the leap on this one. I thought like it was a strong performance from the guest stars. I thought Raymond Lee did a great job. Caitlin Bassett had some great scenes with him, and I like the direction the show is going. I like that there is positive changes.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, very much the same. I think that the show is continuing to improve and develop. I mean, we're still only on episode 9. I mean, it's still early days, but it's such a good episode, such a good one to come back after the hiatus. I hope the fans love it as much as I did.
Yeah, I have to say, stars are aligning, stories are aligning. Overall, it's just a much more solid feeling show as we come back from the hiatus. And again, it could just come down to that confidence that you had mentioned, Matt, because they now know that they have a palette to play with and not just are we going to be surviving from episode to episode. So it just opens up vast new possibilities, and I, for one, can't wait to see them. If this is a harbinger of things to come, I think the show is going to be going some very interesting and some very good places. And I can't wait to see how it evolves. I can't wait to see how everything turns out. And I'm especially now so much more invested in the Janis storyline than I have been. And I can't wait till we get back to how this all ties into Leaper X. This is, it's just like a lot of big shifts here that are bringing these things together. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Can I make a prediction here?
Sure.
About the Leaper X stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
So Leaper X, he's got to take a side job, right? He's working Grubhub. And and he gets called into the project, like Ian's really hungry, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call Grubhub, and doesn't know that Leaper X is working for Grubhub. So Leaper X shows up. And due to some mix-up, is inside the project, but no one's there. Like, hey, I got your Grubhub. And then notices Janis in the brig or whatever. And then she's like, hey, get me out of here. And then they're holding me hostage. And then And then Leap Rex is like, what? And then she's like, you need to leap because of whatever. And then we got to stop this thing, but you can't tell them nothing about it. And then Leap Rex is like, I guess. And then he leaps, and then that's how he becomes the Leap Rex.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Why not?
This is beat for beat what's going to happen. I'm just going to say.
Well, let's hope no one is listening to that, because you know the way these things work. If that gets back to the production team, they're going to be like, oh, we had that whole idea mapped out, but now we can't do it because then if we use it...
They're furiously erasing their whiteboards, Pregler.
They're erasing Grubhub off of the screen like, we can't do it now. She called the Grubhub.
There goes that sponsorship tie-in, you son of a bitch.
Damn it.
Allison Pregler strikes again.
She's the world's greatest detective.
Her and Jen. There's going to be a side series. There's going to be webisodes of Allison and Jen solving mysteries. Anyway, I think that puts this discussion of fellow travelers in the books. But stay tuned, because after the break, we will be bringing you our interview with Georgina Reilly.
A one-way ticket, that's the price you pay. Another day, another song. Traveling on.
The QLP is brought to you by listeners like you. Please go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast and give as much as you can. For as little as $1 a month, you can be a contributor to the Quantum Leap Podcast. It goes to covering our server cost and helps keep the podcast going. Thank you.
This is Raymond Lee, and you are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Hey guys, one thing I forgot to mention. Did you notice how long Addison hung out after Ben leapt? I mean, this is right. We discussed that. Yeah. Right. Hey everyone, we're back. But this is something I forgot to mention. Apparently, she could just sit there and watch the rest of the concert.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, Ben as well. This makes no sense to me. This makes no sense to me. If she could just hang out, she could go to any point in time in the imaging chamber.
That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe there's some leftover quantum energy or something. I don't know. Whatever.
See,
you think she saw the guy
I'm headcanoning all over?
Yeah, you think she saw the guy like that Ben leaped into sitting there like, what the? I've been stabbed? Like, come on.
And she's just ignoring it because the song's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, shut up.
I was just escorting her to rehearsal, and now I'm stabbed?
So maybe this is, now I have a little bit of headcanon on this. Maybe because Ben has established a link with this period in time, Ziggy is able to go to that period in time. It's just the new build. It's just the way the new Quantum Leap works.
Yeah.
Also, since, Ben and the Leapy are cohabitating the same space at the same time, the Leapies all know too much, and Addison hangs out after Ben leaps every time to ice them all so that the secret of Quantum Leap doesn't get out. She's doing all the wet work.
How is she icing them?
She does the waterboarding.
How is she icing them? She's a hologram.
Holographic magic.
Holographic magic. Like she could touch Ben the whole time, but she's been using these
magnets and lasers
powers instead to ice the Leapies.
Okay, I'm saying it's not a perfect theory. It's a work in progress. Okay. Okay. So
we'll workshop it.
Hey, lest we forget, there is an interview that we have to throw to. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
As we promised, here is our interview with Georgina Reilly. Joining us now is Georgina Reilly. Georgina, welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Well, I mean, we are so thrilled now. We've had every main cast member on the show, and you are our last get. You are the big bad, the main villain, and one of the few characters in the new series that's tied to legacy characters. So we're going to get into all the geeky stuff with you. But before we get too into the weeds, could you just tell us a bit about your background, how you got started in the business, and how you came to Quantum Leap?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, actually, first off, I want to acknowledge you guys for your attention to detail. I've been listening, And like,
have you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have. I was wondering where Allison was. But I have, because I find, you get told about podcasts and you're like, I want to, obviously you want to know it's a professional thing. You should want to know what's going on and, where I'm going and stuff. But I really do admire your attention to detail on things that are just, it's impressive. So I'll just start with that. You can keep that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where I'm from. Well, I was born in England. I left when I was 16 after my GCSEs, which no one will understand except Matt, maybe what that is. And I moved to Canada and I finished school there. And then my family is a bunch of artists, mainly musicians. So I kind of grew up in an artistic household. So being an artist of some kind was just kind of the natural thing to do, kind of like, when you're born of lawyers and doctors and stuff. And so I just started acting. I finished high school and I called an agency and I said, I'd like an agent, please. Cause I wish I had kept that sort of like just assuming it would work out like that. It did. They were like, sure. Cause I think they were just so shocked at just like the directness of the question. And then just from there, I started working in Canada and, bit by bit and show by show. And I met Martin Garrow in Canada when I was 24. So like last year, and on a show. And that's kind of leaped forward, like all these many moons later. That's kind of how I ended up here on Quantum Leap.
And did you know at the point that that you auditioned for Quantum Leap that this was going to be a recurring role? What awareness did you have of this?
Actually, Martin called me. I didn't have any information. I didn't know what the character was. Martin gave me a call when, the pilot already happened and obviously they were reshooting the pilot. And Martin called and said, hey, like, how are you? Well, I got an email saying there's interest in you for a guest star on Quantum Leap. And I was like, oh, cool. And right now I have a almost 5-year-old and I've really been trying to stay in LA for work. Because my husband's also an actor and we're always traveling. And I just decided this year, I was like, I'm going to try and just stay here. And, thankfully when Martin called, he was like, yeah, I heard there was a guest star. And I was like, oh, I'll go do a guest star. Sure. Like, where is it? It's in LA. Great. And then Martin actually called me and he was like, well, it's not just a guest star. We're not, with these things with shows, you know how it goes. You never know, especially recurrings. It's just how the storyline is going to evolve. And as you've seen with the headquarters stuff, it's just an ever evolving thing. And with time travel, you do this here and then that changes that here. So maybe that person doesn't exist anymore. Like, I don't know. And that was kind of, he told me, I was like, well, what's the character? And then he said Dean Stockwell. And I was like, well, he's like acting royalty. And I got excited. I had seen the show as a kid, like here and there. My dad and my brother definitely watched it. And that was kind of it. There was a lot of mystery. The way you guys are feeling right now was how I still am feeling to some degree because, the scripts are still coming.
Well, it's funny that they had mentioned Dean to you specifically. When they approached you to play Janis, did they give you the background for the character, sort of where it fit into the legacy of the series to prepare you for your overall place in the universe? I guess what I'm asking is, how much did what come before inform where they started to approach your character in the new show? Or if you can even answer that.
Well, you obviously have seen what at the time when I had the first call, I didn't know. It was as the scripts came that this was going to be an important. I actually don't even know when Janis came into play because they did the pilot, and I don't know if Janis was always an idea or not. But it was definitely going to be an important piece. Being Al's daughter, it obviously comes with a lot of weight and a lot of significance from the original. And I do think it's important, like as a character, what you saw in 103 with what she went through with her mom and like growing up being completely groomed. I mean, I kind of think of it this way, like you guys love Quantum Leap, right? And imagine if your parents like created the show and like you went to screenwriting school and you were like learned all the episodes, which you guys have, and you knew everything about it and every actor, and they're like, you're going to take over. And it's the only television show that exists like in the world. And then one parent's like, actually, you know what? After all those years of prep, we're just not going to let you do that. So I think the reason why Janis, some people are like, oh, she's a villain, or, you know, I'm like, well, it's kind of fair. Like she's supposed to be there, and it would have been, you know, it was her legacy to inherit, in my opinion. And that was all I was really told. But obviously, as the scripts came, I'm finding out a lot more now, because as you see in the series, this is very sprinkled right now as we get towards the end of season 1. So if that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think what we're this isn't a question really, just a response to what you said. We know a couple of us have read the original pilot script, and we know she was in that. And
I hadn't read the original, so I don't know.
Yeah, so she does seem to have been a concept from the very start. And certainly what we're seeing is, although there was this kind of antagonistic element at the start of the show, we're now learning that, yeah, she's working with Ben. She's helping Ben. The last time we saw her, she was saying she was trying to give Ben some sort of warning. So
cattails, right?
Yes, she likes to get involved in the interviews.
It was just so dark, and then it was like your own little tail just came up while you were talking. Don't worry,
definitely a cat.
There. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so no, just an observation, really, and I don't know how that affects your performance or your approach to the character. That she was sort of set up to be the antagonist or the villain of the series, but there is obviously this other side to her that she's there as the support for Ben, just a support that we don't fully understand yet.
Yeah, that's what I love about her, and it's actually been one of the harder roles in a way for me to balance and in the performance, especially in the episodes coming towards the end. It's been really interesting because with what I can say and not say, you know, it's this how much information that one can give away, and I'm trying to put this in a way that I can say it. It's been a really fun character because every episode has been slightly different, and it definitely started off a certain way, but there's all this knowledge underneath it. And I think it's always fun when you go back and you rewatch something from the beginning. You actually see, you then re-see it. Now that you know this at the end, you start seeing those details in the beginning. And I have so many questions for the writers, a lot, because I'm very aware of the fact that that sometimes things change. And I'm like, I want to make sure that what's happening here, you know what I mean? If you went back and watched it, makes sense with where we're heading, even though that sometimes changes. And as an actor, that's a really fun thing to do, because I have to really think all the time of like, well, how would I talk to this person differently from that person? And why would I talk to this person that way? And what do I know? And like, all because Ben and I know about what's coming. Do you know what I mean? It's anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely been an interesting juggle.
When you were working with Susan, playing your mom, Beth, were you able to kind of talk amongst each other about your backstories for like your individual characters and how they work into the Calavicci family? And like, did you have any thing in both your minds when you were playing those characters that we might not have seen on screen but informed your performances?
Yeah, we hung out in the trailer. I love Susan. It was very funny. When I got the job, Susan had a scene with Magic, I think, in an episode before I had a scene. And I met her in the trailer, and I saw her, and I was like, I actually had looked this up before. When I was talked about the role, I watched like all the scenes, and I watched the scene where Sam comes back and talks to Beth, which just is the most heartbreaking scene. And then the other scene I love is the scene where Al talks to Sam about, I think this is the reason for this leap is for you. Beth's the only woman I ever loved. That whole scene, just like, he's just so good in it. And he's like pretending to not care. You know, he's looking at the the hand link while he's talking to him. Anyways, and I saw the two of them and I was like, well, I'm lucky because like I get why I could be their kid. So that's like a nice, it's, you know, this was the way the role had to go, obviously with these two already existing, which I think is so cool because there's this link to the past. And I asked her so many questions about, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, well, how do you feel about the new show? And like, what was it like working with Dean? And, you know, all these, it was very fun. And we sat in the trailer for a while and we talked about, you know, when we were working on 103, that scene, we really had to, you know, I was like, well, what do you think? How long has it been since, you know, Dad passed away? How often have I seen you? Do I talk to you very much? Like, what's our relationship? And Susan and I definitely kind of went through all those details, and it had definitely been a while since I had seen her. But I think, you know, Janis had only just figured out what her mom did. And, so it was very still present for Janis in that moment, plus the information that she obviously in 108, we know got some information from Ben and why she's even doing any of this. And yeah, we got to talk about it was fun. And we went over the scene and we talked about all those details. And I love that because I like hearing also what, you know, you kind of come in with your ideas of what you think they think, but then they tell you what they actually think. And it's always like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And that's the joy of creating something with someone.
Right. And putting that backstory in place for just to inform the way you do the character. Now, as we saw at the end of 108, we've sort of had a sea change in the way we're going to be viewing Janis going forward. Maybe not such a bad guy, maybe just working across purposes at Ben's request. So potentially an ally. Will we be able to see, do you know, a little bit more of that backstory of how she was being groomed to work for the project, and then Magic decided, well, conflict of interest, maybe too close? Will we get to see any of the lead up that led to the initial meeting with Ben, and then the stuff that leads up to her working against the project for all intents and purposes?
I can't say yes or no because I'm not sure, because we still have we still have the rest of the season. We're still shooting. So I can't say yes or no. I definitely have a lot of questions about my relationship with Magic, because I think I was groomed by, this is my personal, what I've created for myself is that I was definitely groomed by my dad. I'm the youngest of the 4 kids. So I'm like the baby. And I think that I was around, all the others had gone off and I was with, Al all the time. And I was interested in what he did. And I don't think that Al, I remember listening to you guys on earlier podcasts about do we think Al was just sad forever? And it's an interesting, I think that he got on with, my personal thing is I think he got on with his life, but I don't think, how do you ever? And I think it might have been you, Matt, or I'm not sure who it was, but it was how do you ever forget your friend, your best friend who's just lost in time, that you completely, you know what I mean? You'd never go, you'd get used to it like we all do in those ways that we can think in comparison, but you would never forget because he's still alive. He's still alive for all we know. And I think I always had the goal of I think, she had the goal of what her dad would have wanted. And I don't think there was ever an agreement that she was going to work for the program. I think she assumed it. Because she's pretty sure of herself and she's pretty smart. And I think she was like, well, obviously I would run this thing. You know what I mean? And then because that's the conflict of just assuming something that then really goes a different way and not even knowing it was your mom who didn't even want you to do it. There's definitely, I think, some things with Magic, finding that relationship with Magic, because there's a history there underneath, but also keeping the story going forward. Because as you know, there's so much information to get into these episodes. But I've definitely thought about of that. Whether we'll see it fully, like a flashback to it, I cannot say.
I'm interested. You've you sort of mentioned a couple of times about the relationship with Magic and whether or not we'll see this develop. So far, what we've seen of you on set has been, I think you had the work with Susan, you've done some work with Ray. Have you actually had much chance to interact with the rest of the cast and crew, or have you been kept quite isolated?
I don't know what would give away something.
Without this was just more. I'm just more talking socially, if anything, that rather than
I was
in
very
terms of
isolated.
spoilers for the series.
Yeah, I was pretty isolated in the beginning because I would just pop in. I mean, a lot of my stuff was made by myself, right? Like, with the imaging chamber, and there was definitely, I was not around the main cast at all, which was fine because it's kind of like how Janis is as a character. But I did get to finally meet Ray, who, as you guys know, is just really wonderful. And Caitlin, and, on shoot days, obviously, when we in the trailers, we all kind of pass one another. And so, but, I've met more people now. That's all I can say. What do you want to see?
Unintentional fishing for spoilers.
What do you think? What do you think what are your ideas?
Oh, do you want, our speculation?
Yeah.
Now that,
or what you want.
Yeah, I mean, as of the time that we're recording this, it's just the end of 108. We just found out that Janis is working at Ben's behest to save Addison from something. I think that now that we have that shift in perspective, I'm hoping that we bring Janis into the fold somehow, and that we see all of you guys working more in lockstep towards a common goal instead of at cross purposes with one another. Mm-hmm. I know that you probably can't answer that, but you asked what I'd want to see. That's what I would want to see because I'm intrigued by it,
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I feel the opposite. I like the idea that maybe ultimately they are going towards a common goal, but have different ways about it. And there is still this ongoing, slightly antagonistic relationship where you have the project team trying to achieve something, and Janis and Ben, I guess, trying to achieve the same thing, but in very different ways. I think that could be an interesting thing to play with.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I wish we did this interview after a different episode.
We can always have you back.
You'll have to come back.
I think those are both really nice ideas, Yeah.
Very kind. Very kind. So you have gotten to basically have a fan dream. Your character is the only one that has handled one of these.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So tell us a little bit about the prop that you guys were using for the handling. It was a little bit different than this one. And we've seen Janis now used it, I think, 2 or 3 times on screen that we've seen. Yeah. Are you guys still using the old stand-in handling? Have you switched to, because I know that you can get these now. Are you going to go the more colorful?
Mine doesn't have as much color as that. Mine's a little more bluey, greeny.
Right. So I think Matt can give you the history on that.
Yeah, so the one you're using seems to be a genuine relic from 30 years ago, which is in itself quite a surprise to us. So it was a stand-in hand link that was used for kind of stunt purposes or rehearsal purposes, but the fact that there's a 30-year-old prop still kicking around, albeit not a screen-used one.
Yeah, they pulled it out of all
very cool to us as fans. We spotted it and immediately recognized it.
So you haven't gotten to use the new ones yet? The new brighter colored ones yet? Yeah, Deborah had ordered 2 of them, and we were hoping she was going to use them on the show.
Oh, really? I don't know about that, but I will say that when you hold those things, you feel the fan base's feelings. You just do. You're just like, there's so much significance to this thing. And, and I have listened to you guys and and other people who are like, I love Quantum Leap. And it's cool to be a part of something that already has all of this connected to it. You know what I mean? So, and I feel it, and you feel a responsibility too, because you're like, God, I'm out. I mean, when I first got the part, I was like, do I need to have a New York accent? And like, I was like, watching out. I was like, we're obviously 30 years in the future. You're not exactly like your parents. There's like, and Janis is a little more like there's a seriousness right now that's obviously going on. So Janis isn't getting to, it's not her on like a Friday night, it's a serious situation. So, but there's definitely glimmers of, I don't know. Al was pretty dry. And I do think Janis has that in her as we see more of what's to come. But yeah, holding the hand link was very cool. And having his ring, there's a lot, like, there's things for me that I find, because of the love for the show and because of the love for Dean as well. I don't know, it kind of comes with you. I know it sounds so silly because it's just props, but like they hold a significance that actually is helpful.
Have you referred back to Dean's performances in any other ways to help inform the way you carry Janis, the way she presents herself physically on screen, and anything like that?
Well, I watched a good amount of Al. I also watched Dean in interviews in general because his career is very interesting. I watched like this 45-minute just like interview that I found. And my main thing with Al is obviously, look, we're dealing with a different time of television, and, so things can't be exactly, in a different time period in general. But one of the things when I actually just watch him is I try to think of it more like, this is my dad. You know what I mean? Like, what are the things about my dad that I like? What are the things that I don't like? What are, those Al, what am I like? And I think that, I think she was someone like Al, to me personally, would raise you with such certainty in certain things in your, like, you're just like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to figure it out. Cause like, that was something that I have created for myself, that she was raised to be pretty, confident and strong. I mean, yeah, that's kind of how I've looked at it, because to copy him completely wouldn't really make sense because I'm not him and you're not exactly like your parents. Do you know what I mean? And then there's also Susan's performance and who she is as the character of Beth and what that would give Janis. So that's kind of how I use that to the best of my ability within the storyline too. There obviously has to be moments to show these things. And I think it just depends on what situation a character is put in, but I think the importance of the project and what the project means, that is definitely right now just a very solid part of Janis. And that's really her. She's just very focused right now on that.
Are we ever going to find out why Beth held your character back from working on the project?
She kind of mentions it in 103. They don't really get, she just says, she's like, I just didn't want you to become like your dad about it, whatever that means. Cause obviously that could mean lots of different things, or become obsessed with something. I don't know. Maybe Beth it'd be cool to see her again. It'd be cool if she has some information that maybe other people don't have. I personally, this is me now. I personally would love Magic and Beth to have some sort of relationship. I think that would be interesting. I just thought they were cute together. I just feel like there'd be a conflict there. I don't know. I just thought I was like, I thought in their scenes they were cute. That's just me. Yeah, that was kind of all she said, is she just didn't want her daughter becoming obsessed with something, but maybe she was aware that this was, maybe she had spoken to Magic a bit more and knew about what the project was doing and just didn't really want me to get caught up in that, because I do think Janis has a life. I don't think her life was just this. I think Janis assumed she was going to work there. And that was probably, I don't know how long has this been going, the QL program right now? Do we know that?
I think that they were established it for 5 years. They were building it, and then Ben leapt and they still weren't quite ready.
Right.
But they were at the 5-year mark.
Right. So Janis was rejected a while. I think she'd already kind of, she was rejected, and then Ben came to see her however long ago. Has that been revealed?
Well, we know it's at least 6 months.
Exactly.
6 months ago that he started disappearing off.
Yeah. So I think Janis had kind of gone off and started her own, kind of gone with life. I don't think she was sitting around waiting for Magic to call. I think she was like doing other things. And then Ben shows up. And, I think she's like, well, obviously, you need me. Yeah, that was all. And I think maybe Beth knows something. That's all I really know about that. And then what she said in 103, which was just, I just don't want you to, Like me with my 5-year-old. I just don't want you to climb the thing. I think it's going to be okay. But it just not. Just on a much bigger scale. Like, what if I got lost in time? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah. Mother's
would be a bummer.
That makes sense.
Right.
I had a silly question about the Halloween episode, O Ye of Little Faith. There was a set photo that was released of the shadow, and it was the only photo that the actor wasn't given. And there's like some speculation in the fan community. Was that Caitlin? Was that you? Do you know? Did you play the shadow? There was a person like that looked kind of like you, kind of like Caitlin, but in heavy black makeup, a demon makeup, wig. Were you privy to that during your filming of the Halloween episode, or were you all like green screen? Or
I didn't get any fun demon makeup.
Okay,
I don't know who that would be. Yeah.
So that eliminates you as a suspect. So
that's right. Mystery continues.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. Did you enjoy filming those little parts of the Halloween episode?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had to do pickup. I mean, it was kind of like a pickup situation for me, just getting in those last like moments and stuff. But that episode in general is very fun. The leaps are so fun. I have leap envy because I love period pieces. I'm a big I've worked a lot in different time periods in my career, and I love it because I just love what the crew is doing, like in regards to like wardrobe and makeup and set. I mean, they're pulling these things together under it's crazy. Like when you have a show that's set in the 1800s, the whole show is set in the 1800s and you're pulling everything in your set dressing and you're good. Right. But when you're getting scripts so fast and you're like, well, now we're in the 60s and now we're in the 90s and now we're here. Like, I think it's so impressive, just everything they're pulling off. And then I get costume envy because I'm like, that looks kind of fun over there. Like I want to leap. Would you leap? Mm-hmm. You'd leap, right? Like in real life, if you had the option?
Well, only 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as I got to bring my daughter with me, and me and her would travel through time.
Go together.
Well, I think we're hoping since ever since that reveal that Janis has her own imaging chamber, that you get to do, no spoilers, I know, but you get to do more of what Allison's doing and having scenes in the present day, doing all that stuff, and also popping up in the past. So
yes, I need to show up hungover in a bright shirt.
Smoking a cigar, maybe.
Yeah, a cigar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just calling people nozzles. It'll be great.
You see me leaping in 1970. I don't know. Cut that part out. They'll be like, she's trying to take my job leaping. I just like period pieces.
Yeah, so that's something we'd like to see. I mean, you're asking us what we'd like to see, where we'd like it to go. In as much as you can tell us, where would you like to see Janis wind up?
I'm similar to you guys. I think I never like removing conflict completely because that's no fun. I mean, it's fun to have some drama. I don't know. Obviously I'd love, it'd be so cool to find Sam. That would be the ultimate, for Janis to do that I feel like that would be very emotional for Janis, like through her dad. Like, I think that would be just that one scene alone would be just like, I'd be like, I'm dead. That was good. How great is that? That's so awesome for everybody. That would be a very cool thing. Other than that, honestly, I just get excited because when I get the scripts, it's always a little bit different than what I'm expecting now, which is fun for me. And that's why I like being an actor, because I like just getting scripts and figuring out like, ooh, what am I going to bring to this? And that's the excitement of it. So I'm just open for the ride because it's got a lot of options to it, which I think is what's cool about having headquarters is like, it's a slow burn right now because it's all being established. But I think it's cool to bring in this new element to the show and have, more things about what's happening in the day tied to the leap and like trying to fix the leap. And anyway, I think, that's my long answer.
Well, if you want to see if we can arrange that Janis rescues Sam, Albie has Scott's number. So Albie, you'll give Scott a call, right?
All right.
We'll get Scott on for. We'll put that in the works for you. Don't worry about it.
That'd be so cool. And then I'll have to talk to you once you have other information where we can really,
Yeah, we'd love to have you
We've
back.
been hearing that.
Season 1.
Yeah. We've been hearing the same thing from many of the cast members saying, "Oh, we wish we could talk to you after this episode, or when everything is revealed at the end, we could have a much more in-depth discussion about all this stuff." So we realized that there are some constraints that we're all under at this point. But standing invitation to any and all who want to come back and really just let their hair down once everything has been revealed and we know sort of where the series is headed. We'd love to have you.
No, I know. It's one of those shows where I think you guys ask really like unexpected questions, or you have unexpected details that you notice that I find I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I didn't think about that, which actually is helpful, in performance when you listen to people talk about the show or things they like about the show. I actually find it interesting, or don't like about the show. It doesn't matter because it all is like, oh, okay, that's an interesting view that they have. Like, how could I add that? Oh, I have this scene coming. How would that maybe answer that question? Or, it's all interesting. And that's what I like about art, is that whether you like it or don't like it, it's something that people are talking about, which is really the point of it, is that you're like, oh, I'm thinking about it. And I think it exercises your empathy because you are seeing something through somebody else's viewpoint. You're like, well, they would never do that, which means you're understanding them to a certain degree. Do you know what I'm saying? Even if you're like, I don't think the character would do that, but you're like, I don't know. It's all, I just find it all very interesting, people's different views of it.
Well, we're gratified that you listen to the show, and that it's surreal for us, because I've said this just on every interview. We're used to talking about a 30-year-old show where if we do talk to a guest star, it's a job they had, back in 1989, and let's say, what can I remember? I don't know.
Yeah.
And here you are in the thick of it, and we're getting to speak to everybody in real time. It's quite a privilege, and just a great place to be as a Quantum Leap fan and podcaster. So, I mean, we can't thank you enough for coming, making yourself available, coming and reaching out to the fandom through us. I mean, is there anything else about the Janis character that we haven't touched upon that you would like to explore, or any messages for any of the Leapers out there who are listening?
The Leapers, well, I hope you feel I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what I would say. I mean, I think, I hope that, not that I hope people like Janis. I think it's kind of, whatever. I just hope that they feel, actually, I don't know. I just want people to enjoy the show, and I hope that they feel that they're getting, I guess, through Janis, and I think there'll be more of that they get more of these details that connect them to the past, which is what's fun for the people who did watch the original series. And, I think they will ultimately like her a lot more. And that's all I can, and I hope so. And, I guess thanks for being so, welcoming to this. I know for the main core cast, they've been like, it's cool. Cause I listened to obviously Ray and Caitlin's and Ernie's. It was just cool. I know that they were saying about being welcomed into this new thing. Cause it's not big shoes to fill. It's new shoes to fill. And it's also finding the balance between the new and the old. And I hope that people are getting at least, some of what they miss, and then something new that they get to be like, ooh, this is different. Yeah.
Very well put. Well, thank you very much, Georgina, for appearing with us on the Quantum Leap podcast.
Thank you.
Guys, what did I tell you? Was Georgina the greatest? Calling Allison out by name? Allison, ooh, are you blushing?
You should.
First of all, she's great. She's really funny, and I love her. I have a lot of things to say about Janis, but Georgina Reilly, I love her, and I love Nanrisa Lee too. Anything that I have to say about the characters has nothing to do with the actors, and I feel bad knowing that they listen, because I never want to hurt anyone's feelings, so I don't know. What I took away from that is that she's great, and it's really awesome that she has such a positive attitude about it. Same with Nanrisa Lee, that they're like, the fact that people are talking about this stuff and trying to be constructive is good. So, it's good that that's the takeaway from it. They're very classy.
Yeah, and it strikes me that Georgina is having the time of her life. I mean, she just seems to be having a lot of fun. So Narissa felt that way too when we spoke to her. And it's great because that enthusiasm, I think, carries over into the way that they portray their characters. I feel like they know how lucky they are to be playing in this universe and to be doing this neat stuff. And it colors the way that they approach it in a positive light. So I had a lot of fun talking to her. My biggest embarrassment, though, is I completely forgot that we were on a podcast because we were speaking to her on Zoom and we put this stuff on our YouTube channel. So, of course, I bring up the hand link. And all I do is hold up my prop, and I didn't preface it for anybody who might be listening. So if you're out there and you're confused, I'm sure that you eventually got it when you heard the bleeps and the bloops and the squeals. But yeah, mea culpa. I got caught up in the video aspect of this, and I was a little starstruck to be speaking with Georgina. So you'll all forgive me, I hope.
No one will forgive you for this.
Then we have to move on.
That was the biggest sin.
Okay. So, hey, in that case, forget about all that. We have another interview. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Mr. Matt Dale and Albert Burge sat down with composer Jamie Jackson, and here is our interview with Jamie.
Hey, this is the Quantum Leap podcast, and tonight on the show, we're really excited to have a special guest with us. We have Jamie Jackson, who wrote the song Travelling On from the latest episode, Fellow Travellers. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, we're definitely going to want to talk about the song and the background behind that and your experiences on the show. But perhaps first you could give us a little bit of background and talk us through your career so far and what have been the highlights and what's got you to this point writing songs for TV.
Yeah, well, my husband and I are partners, and we were making records as singer-songwriters. And a lot of the songs were being licensed for film and TV. So, you know, when you hear a popular song in the background that isn't score, we call them needle drops. We were getting a lot of those. And there was a creator on a show called Scrubs, Bill Lawrence. He had placed a lot of our music on that series, and he had an upcoming series. And he was looking for a composer. And so he had us audition. And we auditioned together. And they gave about 10 composers a shot. And they gave us all numbers so that nobody, you know, people had their friends or people they'd worked with in the past. They just wanted it to be completely unbiased selection. And we ended up, that's how we got our first job composing for TV and film. And so we've done that for 12 years now. And then in between projects, we'll write songs, and make albums as singer-songwriters and produce other songwriters. And we get hired to do songs, for series like Quantum Leap.
So, so I didn't realize you did a bit of both because I kind of, during research for this, I went back as far as I could and I found your work as Hot as Sun, and that seemed to also be TV and film music as opposed to something that you'd done yourself that had then been licensed. Was that right? Or have I got that the wrong way around?
No, it's the other way around. Hot as Sun is an electronic project that started on hiatus from the first television series we did. I just wanted to have some fun and make music for no reason. And it ended up getting picked up by some local radio stations, and we got signed by a label in Canada. And so I was doing that part-time.
Okay. Yeah, no, I listened to the album and it's some great music. It's just, as I was searching for the songs, I kept finding them popping up in TV shows. So I kind of figured it was the other way around. Yeah. Interesting. Great. Yeah. So how would you describe the kind of differences between getting an assignment for TV and working to, I don't know what kind of spec they give you. I guess they give you the storylines, the characters, whatever, versus just being able to do something where you're looking more internally or from your own experience?
Yeah, when I'm writing and recording a song for a series or a film, I'm telling someone else's story and I'm helping realize someone else's vision. And, you know, Dean is great to work with that way, because when I worked with Dean on Bluff City Law, I don't know if you saw that series that he created, but we did the score for that, but we also wrote some songs. And Dean really invites you into his world when you're working with him and gives you full access. And it's really invigorating because, you know, with Quantum Leap, I got a text from him on a Sunday saying, hey, would you be interested in writing a song? We're going to leap into the 70s. We've got 2 weeks to complete it, which means I have about 5 days to write it, send out the first draft. And they called me from the writer's room. So as they were writing the episode, I was also writing the song. And he invites you right in, you know. A lot of showrunners and executive producers don't do that, but he makes the time. And then that helps your instincts to hopefully get it quick. So we got it on the first try because Dean was so welcoming. You know, they were on their 9th episode. They're a well-oiled ship. I'm just jumping in. I don't know the other writers and producers, and I didn't have time to learn their language, their taste. And so there was just an open communication with Dean and the writers, and, you know, they were still casting it. They, in the middle of the process of writing the song, we actually did a time leap in the process and changed we went from 1970 to 1979 / early 80s and went less. The first idea was to go more country pop, and we went more rock pop. And so it's a very fast and furious process because, you know, you have to have the pre-records and have everything ready for them to record live, have all the musicians lined up. And, but it's always fun with Dean because, again, he really invites you into his world, but he lets you do your job. You know, he's good at conveying the emotional arc and what he's going for and what story we need to tell, and also what songs and energy was inspiring to him. So that really, you know, it's very different working that way versus me just going into my studio and going, you know, what am I feeling? Let me just let it out. You know, what do I want to say? So, that's how it's really different.
Is there a lot of like pressure when you're writing a song for an episode like this? Like when I first watched the episode and I heard the song, I was like, wow, this is good. How did I ever miss this? Or maybe it's original, but I feel like I've heard it and it's a big hit. So is it like a lot of pressure? You got to write like her main song that everybody wants to hear when they come to the concert, and this has to, because I mean the song really could make or break the episode, and it really made the episode in this case. Is that like a lot of pressure to write a #1 hit, like even in a TV show universe? You know?
Well, thanks for saying that. It's so much pressure. You should have seen the playlist I got from Dean and the writer Drew. They were like, these are the songs and the vibe that we like. And it was, you know, all of my heroes, all of the greatest songs ever written. And so, yeah, I felt a lot of pressure from that angle, you know, because as a musician, you're always striving to hit, you know, get that hit song. And, but it was helpful that it was just so fast. Like I had to go with my first instinct. And as I was saying, it shifted. Like we started with 1970 more country pop inspiration. So we're thinking like Dolly Parton. We're thinking Linda Ronstadt, Nancy Sinatra. So we were leaning more in that direction. And I had about 24 hours in the studio, and I was circling in on a chorus and some lyrics for the verse, because you're also writing lyrics coming that have to mean something, that have to support the emotional arc and the storyline between Carly and her sister. And then it also ties in with Ben and Addison and the whole thing. So, and I was a little stuck, midway through, which always usually happens at some point. And I get a text from Dean and he's like, "I'm so sorry, Jamie, but we're changing the whole scenario of the song. Like, it was going to be an award ceremony. Now it's just going to be a performance. Now we want to do 1979, 1980. We want to go more rock." And I was like, "No, it's all good. It's all good." And then that just kind of broke it down for me. I sat down and I wrote it immediately. It just fell out. So the work that we had done in preparation for the other direction just prepped us. And I will say, I co-write a lot with this woman named Jamie Drake. I'm Jamie Jackson. She's Jamie Drake. And I knew that I wanted her to sing on this and be a part of it because, I'm a composer. I'm at home. I've been at home with my kid through the pandemic working, and she's been out still touring, and she really had the spirit of Carly in my mind. And Dean has heard a few songs that Jamie and I have done together. So I brought her in as the vocalist, and we'll get in the room. And so she was part of the writing as well. Again, I just have to attribute it to Dean allowing us into his world and making himself available, and Drew Lindo, who wrote the episode as well, because we were able to. We didn't get really any notes. We're like, that's it, the first try, and it doesn't happen very often, That
obviously speaks to the collaboration that you had up front. Yeah. Not to retrospectively add even more pressure, but you mentioned about the putting the lyrics to the storyline that's going on between Ben and Addison, the storyline that's going on between Carly and her sister. A lot of the lyrics also seem to link to the overall story arc, not just what's going on in that episode, just the whole concept of traveling through time.
Yeah.
Any pressure there as well? Just feeling like you're effectively creating what I'm guessing is going to be the song of the season. I assume there's not going to be any more coming up. So this is the song that's going to represent what we're watching right now as a whole show.
That's exciting. I mean, I have to give that to Dean because he, I loved that he came to me and he was like, the theme is traveler, and I'm like, yeah, that's really brilliant. He conceptually had, let me tie this all together. So that was under the guidance of Dean, honestly, who, also it's always a treasure working with creators that make you better at what you do. And he's definitely one of them.
One of the popular things in the Quantum Leap fan community is the soundtrack that came out for the original series. Is there any talk of a soundtrack for the new series eventually, or was there any talk about putting this on an album one day or releasing it like that? Like in the contracts and the paperwork, like is that allowed for already, or is that something that
we want to hear this song without the damn actors talking over it? That's effectively where you're going with this, Albie, right?
Yes, we want to hear that song.
Yeah, you know what? I did bring it up on set because I was like, the soundtrack is so great and the score is awesome. And I did drop a hint to Dean and Drew. I was like, y'all should really consider doing a soundtrack and releasing it. I think the fans would love it.
I think in the original series, there were 3 times that there was specially composed tracks for the show. And each time, Scott Bakula got the opportunity to just sing the songs and everything else stopped. And so even before the CDs came out, we got the chance to hear the songs. So I joke about the damn actors talking over them, but honestly, this song sort of becomes background music for a bit and then comes back again. So, I think there's some unique value in actually getting this out as a song. We're jumping ahead of ourselves, but I think Albie and I
grew up watching the show, so it's a real thrill to be a part of of the reboot.
In a world where a soundtrack does come out, are there demo versions recorded of like the former versions of the song, like the country Dolly-esque songs of this song? Or could there be?
Well, the funny thing is that when we were writing the kind of Dolly version, it was completely different melody, but it had some of the key phrases that ended up just forming. It just came together. It was like, okay, it clicked. This is where it was supposed to go, you know? But I will say tonally, the acoustic broken down version that the sisters sing at the end, it was leaning more in that direction. So you do get to hear a little bit of how the song sounded in the other genre.
Do you work with the person composing the score for the episode, or is it you work separate and it's just hope that it works together at the end? How does that work?
Yeah, we worked separately. I've never met the composer. So, the producers just do a great job of keeping everything fluid, with their direction. I will say that one of the cool things about the song is the musicians that played on the track are actually on stage playing. We brought in a different pianist because I wanted to be able to watch and make sure everything was going all right instead of being on stage. So we brought in a pianist, but the guitarist, the bass player, the drummer, they all played on the track. And I was like, Dean, can we please just hire them? Because then we know it's going to look great. Sometimes those on-camera performances can be wobbly because the song comes together at such, the last minute and people don't have time to rehearse, or maybe it's an actor that doesn't even know how to play the instrument. But Dean was very open to that and connected me with the casting director. And so 3 of the musicians did play on the track are actually on camera. And then Deborah Ann Wall was brilliant. I mean, that's not her voice. Right?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Usually I can tell. Usually I can tell, but I really thought it was her.
Yeah. She was amazing. She blew us all away. She was really great. And then the sister that, it's Carly and Jamie are the characters' names, and they were both really wonderful.
Can you, just because we've kind of jumped around a little bit, and Albie was asking about the demo, and you're talking about how the recording matched up with what was on stage. Can you just sort of walk us through the process of how these things go from just being in your head to being on screen?
Well, this process, it was so fast. The demo vocals are the vocals that we're using.
And was that you and your partner Jamie?
Yes. Her name is Jamie Drake. And we felt like normally I would just send a acoustic version and not put a whole lot of time into it because, you get notes and you need to redo things and we don't have a lot of time. But, I just felt like we need to sell it. We need to sell it needs to feel electric. And, the first thing they said, who's singing? Who is that? It's amazing, And so they ended up wanting to keep her vocals. And what we did was the only thing I didn't record live for the demo were the drums. So once it got approved and they said, can you make it a little bit longer? We lengthened it. We sent it to a drummer because literally we had no time. And sent it off to a drummer who I was on Zoom, and we were just, talked through the direction. And then we added more background vocals and things because, there's background vocalist. So, and then once we nailed the full band version, they asked for a broken down version. And the first version of it was a little darker. And so they asked us to lighten it up just to give it a little bit more hope. And we did that. But we kept all the demo vocals.
So all bringing in the extra tracks and bringing in the backing and bringing in the drumming, were you overseeing all of that, effectively providing them with a polished piece to use in the episode?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I produced it, and then I went on set just to make sure everything looked great. And we have a person that plays back the track, and all the musicians have, in-ears. And, I just want to make sure that mainly that Deborah, who is playing Carly, is comfortable and good to go, because she's it.
What was the collaboration like between you and Deborah? I'm sure the director worked with her, and she had her own ideas about the character and the song. But what kind of conversations did you have with her about this song and the interaction between you two?
The interaction was not a lot. Just, I'm here for you. She loved the song, and the first time she ran it, we were just, it was a holy shit moment. She's amazing. We're good. So yeah, very little interaction. I think her and Dean really connected a lot. Cause again, it was fast. We didn't even know who the singer was going to be until the song was written. So there was always that chance that the song was going to have to change depending on who they cast. So we got lucky that it all just kind of melded together and worked out. Walking onto the set was incredible because you felt like it was 1979 at a concert. There was the merch booth with albums made and t-shirts made and posters. And it was such a short amount of time. It was wild.
Did you get to keep any mementos from that, like an album cover or a poster or something like that?
I think Dean took a few.
Oh, awesome.
I think Dean saved one for me.
Oh, nice. Very nice. You earned it.
Thank you.
How does the experience you've just talked about, how does that compare to other shows that you've worked on? Are you used to getting to go on set and be supportive, or are you usually more working in the background?
It's both. It's been almost 3 or 4 years since I've been on a set because of the pandemic. I just happened to not work on a show that didn't have any on cameras right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and everything I worked on was virtual, even mixing episodes. So I was so excited. I felt renewed being on set, and, just a reminder of how magical the process is and how many people it takes, and being on a team. It was very inspiring. Again, Dean is special because he really does let you do your job, and so I think that's why the show is running so well and it's doing so well. He's got a clear vision, and then he supports everyone. I mean, when I was chatting with the writer he was working with, we were sharing stories, similar stories on how great it is to work with him, because you really get to do your job, and it's inspiring and exciting, and he's excited he's an inspired creative leader. And so, that's, believe it or not, that's rare in this business, so.
I have like a nerdy question, like multi-part. What kind of software do you use to record and edit your music for TV shows? And like when you send it off to the producers or whoever you send it to, do you send just the mixed down version, or do you got to send individual tracks in case they need them for different things? How does that all work? Because we don't know. So.
Oh yeah, I use a program called Logic. A lot of singers, songwriters, and producers tend to use Logic because it's simple but very creative. A lot of the more technical sound engineers prefer to use Pro Tools, but I can use both. I just enjoy Logic. When I'm bouncing a song for producers to listen to and hopefully sign off on or give notes, I want it to be easy to download. I know they might be in their car or, on vacation or on a plane. And so I bounce usually an MP3 that's, a smaller file, just so that I know I don't get a call like, I can't listen to this, I can't download it. So I'll usually email an MP3 to them. And then once everything is approved, so I didn't finish having the song mixed until they had it edited, in the episode, in case there were any notes like, can you get rid of this symbol, or can you turn this up, or can you change this background vocal? So it kind of held, and I didn't hear anything. And then I hear from the music editor who's on the show, and he's like, all right, we're ready to go. We're going to be mixing in 2 weeks. And I just send him over stems. So I group like the drums, and I bounce the drums, and I bounce, bass and guitar, so that as they're mixing on stage, they have control of the mix. And then I removed like reverb from the vocals, so that, they will have created a reverb in that theater in the show. So it's all consistent. And they take it from there and they mix it, and that's it.
Thank you. That's interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for asking those questions. It's fun to talk about that stuff too.
I wanted to compliment you on the song. I know it'll be on my playlist, for decades to come, like music from the original series. I think it really fits in really good with this new series and the overall Quantum Leap universe and the time it was supposed to be in. I love it. So thank you for it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me. Thanks.
Yeah, the fans are going to love it. It immediately. I had a very similar response to Albie when I was first watching it. That it came on, and I thought this is obviously an original song from the 70s that I just can't quite place. Mm-hmm. And as I started to realise that it wasn't, and it was specially commissioned for the show. I don't know. I know Dean said this 109 just followed straight on in production from 108. They didn't have a hiatus, but it really felt like, oh, we're back after a break, and this is something big and special. And that song coming 2-3 minutes into the episode really helped sell that kind of welcome back to the universe.
That's great, because I know that's what they were really aiming for that. So that's great to hear.
So yeah, it's been great to talk to you about everything you've done so far, and I know Albie and I have learned a lot about the whole production process, which has been fascinating. Can you tell us what's coming next for you, where the listeners can find your current work, anything else you'd like to point us towards, really?
Yeah, my husband and I are working on a new series for Apple right now. It's called Bad Monkey. We're doing that series with Bill Lawrence, who's created Scrubs and produced Ted Lasso, and he's been on a bunch of things you may have seen. And I also just released a single with my indie. It's a little bit more rock and roll, called It Was Bananas. And you can hear that. It's hottestsun.com. And my husband and I have a composer website, WAZ-Jackson. And we usually post about all the projects that we're working on. And also, I'll plug Jamie Drake. She's an amazing singer-songwriter as well. You can find her on Spotify and Apple just under Jamie Drake, Drake.
Thank you once again for your time. This has been a really fascinating interview. And hopefully we'll hear more from you soon.
Yes,
thanks for your time.
Much. It was a pleasure.
That was such a fun interview to lead on. She was so great to talk to. And I think Albie and I both went in there just being told, she composed this song. And I'd certainly gone in thinking, all right, she wrote some music, which is impressive. I can never do it. And then passed it over to the talent to like actually play it and record it and stuff. And she was just unfolding this stuff as we were talking to her, saying, oh, no, I also did this and this and this. Like, oh, okay, the song was actually yours. Yeah. So, hopefully we didn't come across as too dumb, but it meant that she gave us a lot more. I thought we were just going to be interviewing someone who said, well, I sat in my room for a few hours and wrote some stuff, and it was going to be a stretch. But actually, she gave us so much information about the whole process. It was fascinating. It was a really good time.
That's great. It's great to learn something, you know?
Yeah.
You're always like learning new aspects of how all of the stuff comes together to make the show. There's so many like different wheels turning, even on just that aspect of the show. Like the song was great. A small portion of the episode, there's just so many hands in so many different things. And so, really cool to learn about how that was made.
Again, this is the kind of stuff that in 20 years' time will be an invaluable record of the behind-the-scenes goings-on, and it will be Beyond the Mirror Image Volume 7.
You're gonna have to go episode by episode at this point.
It's gonna be the holographic edition of Beyond the Mirror Image, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be projecting it on our hockey puck hand links. All of us, one and all. So, yeah. And the way that interview arose was great because we've been having a back and forth with Dean Georgaris on Twitter. And when I say we, I mean Matt and Allison, because I never go on Twitter because I'm bad at it. But it's been great to see him reaching out to us and sort of commenting on what you posted. And it was a direct result of that interaction that got us this 11th hour interview. So it just shows you, they really are listening, and they're responsive to the fan community, and they're really making an effort to say, hey, you guys, we're here for you. So thank you so much to everybody on the cast and the crew who's listening and supporting us. It means a lot to us.
It really does.
Yes, thank you. Like I'm really grateful for the connections we've made, and just to be able to talk to them. They don't have to talk to us, but the fact that they take the time, you can tell that they're all really appreciative of the fans and the support and trying to make a great entertaining product. And it's really cool to be able to speak with them about it. And if we have any influence on anything, that's great. But, just the fact that we even get to like hear about what their thoughts are and what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm going to delude myself into believing that I'm having some kind of influence, positive or negative. I don't know, but
you got Ernie Hudson cast. You
absolutely. Thank you, somebody finally acknowledging my greatness. Anyway, if you out there listening would like to acknowledge my greatness, there are many ways that you can reach us here on the Quantum Leap podcast. You can write us a letter at P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York, 11705. You can reach us by phone at 707-847-6682. You can email us at quantumleappodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/quantumleappodcast. You can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram like Dean Georgaris at Quantum Leap Pod. And you can also see these interviews and follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Quantum Leap Podcast. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Quantum Leap Podcast. And just remember, we may use your response on an upcoming episode of The Quantum Leap Podcast. And as I said, the YouTube channel's popping again. Albie's back hard at work. I don't think the guy slept in 4 days. He got the, the after shows for both episodes 8 and 9 are out. Whose interviews are featured in episode 8 again? It's been a while.
Nanrissa's is in there. Sierra Riley Wilson's also in there from episode 8.
And Morgan Feldon is also, I think, one of the guest hosts along with Hayden and Albie. And, you know, as everybody out there knows or should know, Morgan made the hand-link replica prop that I held up so embarrassingly in my Georgina interview, as if everybody listening could see it. So,
yeah, he talks about the hand link pretty extensively in the after show. He also discussed it in our Quantum Leap show and tell. He discussed it during one of our when we did Curse of Pahotep with him as well. So yeah, he's Tahotep. I always say it wrong. But yeah, like, and I never get tired of hearing about it. He's so smart. Like, I'm like, sometimes I don't understand what he's talking about, but I'm like, man, that sounds smart.
You missed one other place you can hear him talking about it. For anybody who is a $5 Leaper supporter on Patreon or above that level, I did a whole interview with Morgan for our Oh Boy segment. It's an interview segment that I have for Patreon supporters. So you can listen to him on that, speaking about the genesis of the handling prop as well, and what he loves and doesn't love so much about Quantum Leap. And we also have a fun trivia section in that as well. All that's available again on patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. So we have the many faces of Morgan Feldon.
Folks.
Yeah, right?
We also did, has this been posted yet? We talked about the script for the pilot versus the
Oh yeah, that was posted shortly after the hiatus.
So if you guys are just interested in stuff relating to the new show, we have stuff on there as well, like when we talked about just comparisons to the pilot script to the final episode. We got Fangens, where we talk about just random stuff that we're into. There's lots of content on there that's just for patrons.
For sure. And let's not forget, the after show for number 9 is also up now. You can go to youtube.com/The Quantum Leap Podcast, and it will feature the video versions of our interviews with Georgina and Jamie, with special guest host John Irons, who's a longtime friend of the show, all of which should be plenty to hold you over until next week. Speaking of which, Matt, tell us what's coming up next.
Yeah, so next we're going to be talking about episode 10, Paging Dr. Song.
Right this way, Doc, hurry! Oh, where the hell is Dr. Goldman?
I'm calling her right now.
God, this baby is not due for another month. Why is this happening?
That's an excellent question, which I'm sure Dr. Goldman can answer.
I just got her answering service. They don't know where she is. Who's going to deliver our baby?
She is, right, Doc?
Me?
Okay. You got this.
And we've got a synopsis here, which sounds really cool. Ben leaps into Alexandra Tompkinson, a medical resident in a Seattle hospital. As victims from a train crash pour into the ER, Addison reveals Ben's complicated mission. He must go up against hospital bosses to save lives and Alexandra's career.
At St. Elsewhere. Dun, dun, dun.
And was it the same train that killed Ms. Melanie? Was a young...
Oh, no, he's on the damn train!
Same damn train keeps rearing its
the same
ugly
damn train! This seems like another heavy one.
Yeah, it seems like it's gonna be, I'm hoping like for a multi-pronged drama with a lot of stuff going on, and Ben being.
I mean, it ain't a comedy. We know that for sure.
I'm hoping like the kind of scope, the drama scope that we had in the earthquake episode, and it's a disaster, or what a disaster. I don't know. People might also be interested to know that I pulled that synopsis from a brand new website being created by a certain Quantum Leap podcast host.
Yeah, I never stop creating websites.
So tell us about that one, Matt.
Yeah, so I've been writing about various TV and film stuff for years, and I wanted to start putting it together in one place. So I've launched a new website, forevertv.co.uk, which is just it will be just a collection of all my stuff. And I thought I'd put a basic episode guide to the new series of Quantum Leap on there. So there's some stuff from quantumleapinfo.net on there, but that includes a news feed. So that's still going to have all the latest confirmed information on the series, just like I've got on quantumleapinfo.net, which will be slowly but surely folded into forevertv.co.uk.
Every time that you post like a new news thing on there, is there like the
there should be.
We have a synopsis for Paging Dr. Song.
But yeah, all the synopses are on there, all the photo galleries and links
great.
to all the YouTube interviews. So it's I hope it's useful, and that news feed. So that will continue.
I was looking at it the other day. It's very helpful, and linking to it on the Twitter account. So
thank you.
So for sure,
you're welcome. So you guys should check it out.
It will give everybody something to peruse as they wait for the next episode of Quantum Leap and as they eagerly await the next episode of the Quantum Leap podcast. But until that time, I've been Christopher DeFilippis.
I've been Allison Pregler.
And I've been Matt Dale.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Quantum Leap podcast, hosted by Allison, Matt, and Chris, with voice talent and contributions from Hayden McQueenie and Zoe Dean. To support the show, please go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap podcast. The executive producer of the Quantum Leap podcast is Albert Burge. Christopher DeFilippis and Hayden McQueenie are the co-executive producers. Special thanks to our producers, Chris, aka Brackmang, Mike Covert, Joshua Burwald, Jeff Kiska, Craig Riedler, Cosplay Dad, Charles Allen Gossard, and Morgan Felden. The thoughts expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not necessarily represent those of the Quantum Leap podcast, its partners, or affiliates. The Quantum Leap universe and all it contains is the property of Belisarius Productions and Universal Television. The Quantum Leap podcast is not affiliated with Belisarius Productions or Universal Television, and no copyright infringement is intended. The Quantum Leap podcast is a Barren Space production.
F you, Ben.